Hi everybody, and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you are new, I'm Corie and I'm really excited that you're here. I hope that you'll consider hitting that subscribe button and hit the little bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. To my subscribers, thank you as always for your support. You all mean the world to me. I love seeing all of your comments and getting to interact with you. I'm tickled pink that you guys are enjoying all of the work that I'm putting out there for you to see and hopefully try yourselves at some point. So today we are doing something a little bit different. I have pulled together all of the fall and Halloween projects that I've done so far. So we've got 31 crafts and DIYs all on a budget. A lot of them Dollar Tree, some of them are dupes, some of them are inspired by, a lot of them are originals out of my own little brain. But yeah, they're all right here. So if you missed one in the past, right here for you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on the projects.
So here we go with DIY number 1. So this is my inspiration picture, $48.99 on sale at Wayfair, and we're going to use a Dollar Tree pumpkin, some craft paper, as well as the Waverly chalk paint and elephant. I am going to end up using silver lining as well, and then I have my white Sharpie paint marker. I'm going to start by taking off all of the details on here. I did end up coming in with my heat gun to help loosen up that hot glue that was holding that down because that little sucker was stuck good. So once I had that heated up, I was able to pop that off. And then I just set it aside for another future project. So once I had that all prepared, I came in and gave a really good coat with the elephant. But as I mentioned, I did decide to use my silver lining because I just felt like this was a little too flat. So here I come with the Waverly chalk paint silver lining with my Dollar Tree chippy brush, and I'm just going to do some dry brushing. So you see me wiping off most of the paint there on the side, and then just coming through and giving our little pumpkin some texture, just going the same direction back and forth across my pumpkin horizontally. So now I have my Java and my oatmeal chalk paint. These are both by Home Decor, which is by Folk Art. And I'm just going to blend those two together until I have my stem the way that I want it. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to come in with my white Sharpie paint marker, and I'm going to hand letter my word on here. So I'm going to be doing the faux calligraphy with this, and essentially that means that, first of all, this is not handwriting, you guys. This is hand lettering. This is sped up. So to about, if I recall correctly, about 3 times the speed that I was actually doing this. So just take your time and you can absolutely do this. Practice on a scrap piece of paper a little bit first if you want. But you see I'm coming in and making some of the strokes thicker. Essentially the down strokes, anywhere you would normally draw down on your letter, you're going to make it thicker, and the upstrokes you're going to leave thin. So just think about it when you're writing your letter, how you draw that letter, and where you draw down, again, that's where you're going to come in and make it thicker, and it just provides a faux calligraphy look. And I think it's really very pretty. So there we are. I wrote blessed. The original had blessings on it, but I went with blessed. And so now I'm coming in with those detail lines for some additional pizzazz and really just following the inspiration picture in that regard. Just going back over my lines to make sure that they are as dark as I want them to be. So now I'm coming in with these little maple leaves from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to pick a few out, and I'm just going to be applying them to the top of my pumpkin with some hot glue once I figure out which colors and how I want to have them on there. So I applied those, and then I'm actually just getting some raffia ready for a bow that I'm going to tie around my stem up at the top. So here I go with the hot glue, just applying my little leaves in the pattern that I want. And as I always say, I'm just doing what looks pleasing to my eye. So once I have those on there and situated, I'm going to trace my pumpkin onto my craft paper, flip it over, and I'm just going to glue this down with some more hot glue. If you don't have a hot glue gun, you could totally use school glue for this. Just takes a little bit more time for it to dry, that's all. So now I am tying my little raffia bow around my stem. I did secure it with some hot glue because the stem tapers, so there was nothing really to secure it in place. And I'm just doing a plain bow, trimming off my ends and fluffing it up a little bit. Isn't it cute? I was pleased with how this came out. So I did take a little soda pop tab, and I'm going to add that to the back to use as a little hanger and just gluing that down with my hot glue. And that's it. So here we go with DIY number 2. So for this, I've got a couple of signs from the Dollar Tree, as well as some fabric from the Dollar Tree. I thought this was super cute. This is from Crafter Square, and it's the buffalo check or the gingham check. And then I'm also going to be using some white, Adirondack white chalk paint. So I'm just going to take all of the little embellishments off of my signs, and I used my heat gun to just heat that up a little bit because the hot glue, I was like, where did that go? The hot glue was just really holding it, and there it is. It just flipped right underneath that other sign. So anyway, I started to try and sand down the surface and then realized I could pull up the burlap that they had on this sign. And so I just pulled that right off. I did that on both signs, and then I just set that aside. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to use that for another project or not. I was hopeful that at some point I might have an idea for it, but I haven't come up with something just yet, so we'll see. But I am using my parchment paper that I love, also from the Dollar Tree. They've got these pop-up sheets of parchment paper, and I use it a lot for paint because my paint doesn't stick to it when I use it as something to set painted items on. But right now I'm just using it for a pattern. So I just used my fingertips and rubbed all the way around. I know you can't really see very well there, but it gave it enough of a crease for me to see where I needed to cut. So now I'm taking my pattern. I had made sure that it was all good on my sign, but now I am taking it on my fabric, and I'm just using a pen, you guys. This is not necessarily the best way to do this. Usually sewers will use chalk to mark their pattern on fabric, but I was just using a pen because I figured I'd be cutting just inside the pen marks and it would be fine. So then I'm going to be securing my fabric to my sign, but not just yet apparently. I'm trying to remember what order I did this in. It's been a few weeks. So I do come in with my chalk paint, my white Adirondack chalk paint, and I'm going to give this a nice coat. And I'm going to do that for both signs. Oh, and you know what? I think what I did was I coated this first because I wanted it to be nice for the fabric. That's what it was. So I coated both sides of these, and then afterwards I ended up adhering the fabric to my sign because I didn't want any of what was originally there to show through the fabric, because we do have those white checks within the buffalo fabric, and so it stood to reason that it might show through. So here I'm just cutting out my vinyl for the projects on my Silhouette Cameo. And you can see I'm using the black, the green, and the orange. And this is what I pulled together for these. So now I've got my fabric, I've got my little decals that I'm going to be applying. And I was pretty proud of these. So first I decided I was going to use my bare wax in dark, and I was just going to come through here and just tone down the white a little bit. I felt like the white was a little bit too stark for the fall, so I just wanted to kind of bring in some warmth. And I had given a little bit more attention here to the stems, but then I ultimately decided to cover that up with some jute cord, so you'll see that in just a little bit. So I'm going ahead and applying my Hello Fall to the one pumpkin. I'll burnish that and get that on, secured. And then my pumpkin spice makes everything nice. I love that. I think that's so sweet. So now on the opposite side, I'm going to go ahead and come in and apply my fabric using Mod Podge. This is the matte Mod Podge. It probably doesn't matter which Mod Podge you use for this, because it's going to be, you know, the fabric over top of it. So just making sure I get that all nice and secured. And did I go over it with Mod Podge again? I'm trying to remember, you guys. My memory is terrible. I did. So if you don't want it to be shiny, you probably do want to come back in with the matte Mod Podge. You certainly could go over it with a glossy Mod Podge. It would just give it a little bit more of a sheen. And now that I recall, I just wanted to make sure that it was going to still maintain that fabric kind of duller finish. And I did Mod Podge the front as well, just to seal it all in. So here I'm coming in with my jute cord that I mentioned before, and this is from Walmart. And I'm going to wrap the edges, and I'm going to go around twice to wrap the edges with the jute cord for each sign. I just wanted to have a nice finished edge, and it was going to help with the transition between the fabric on the one side and then my design on the other side. And I love these because they're reversible. So right now I've had them up on my mantle, and I can flip them back and forth if I want to. I have the words showing right now, but you could also certainly put these on a table, and then obviously they're reversible, so you would have the different designs on either side. You can mix and match them as far as having the fabric showing on one side and the words on, you know, the other. Like, I'm not making any sense right now, but basically you could show the fabric on one and the words on the other together. That's what I was trying to say. And so I don't know, it just gives you a little bit of versatility. Sorry, it's late at night when I'm doing this voiceover, and my brain is a little fried. But as you can see, I'm coming back in and doing the jute cord up the stem and just making sure I've got that nice and secure. And you know, when I do stuff like this for the first time, obviously I'm just trying to figure it out. I did do it differently on the second sign, and I feel like the second time around was much easier and probably looked nicer because I had just kind of figured out a better way to do it. So I had wrapped it all the way up and then all the way back down my stem to meet up my two ends so I could tie this cute little bow. And then I like to finish off my jute cord with little knots at the ends. So isn't that sweet? I really do love these, you guys. I think they're super cute. So coming in for the second one, you can see whereas I started at the top on the first one, I'm starting at the base for the second one. And I didn't cut the jute cord as many times as I had on the first one. I started at the base, I wrapped it around, I just kept right on going. So it was one continuous strand all the way. But leave me a comment and let me know what you think of these projects. Is this something that you think you would try at home? So there I did go ahead and cut off the jute cord, and I'm wrapping my stem. And because I'd gone all the way around, including the top before, it just made it a little bit easier to apply my stem this time. Tying off the knots at the ends of my little bow, and there you have it. Pumpkin spice makes everything nice. Here we go with DIY number 3. So this was my inspiration picture from Grandin Road. This is my Dollar Tree pumpkin and my napkin. This was so popular, you guys. It blew me away at how much you all enjoyed this project. So here we go with it again. So I thought I was going to use that folk art paint. Actually, I think I definitely did on the stem. I was trying to remember. I know I've had some mishaps with gold paint before, but I don't think this was the one. Like I said, my memory is failing me. So the folk art gold paint, acrylic paint, I painted the stem with that. I had used my Adirondack white for the base of the pumpkin, and now I'm just pulling my napkin apart. And you can do this with any kind of napkin. You just want to make sure that if it's a 3-ply or even a 2-ply, you just pull all the pieces apart. So now I am using a brush with just some water and tracing around the area where I want to cut out my pieces. It just makes it easier. This time I am using the gloss Mod Podge because I do want my pumpkin to be a little shiny. So I'm going to come in with some Mod Podge, and then I'm going to apply my little leaves and then coat the leaves again with some Mod Podge. And I do recommend tearing the napkin like I was doing before, as opposed to cutting the napkin out, because when you tear it, you get softer edges, and so it's less apparent that it's something that's been Mod Podged onto your surface. When you cut it, it tends to have a very distinct edge around each of your little pieces that you're Mod Podging. So that's just a trick that I picked up somewhere at some point. So I'm just going around the pumpkin. There's not really a rhyme or reason to what I'm doing as far as where I'm placing the various leaves. I'm just doing what looks nice to my eye. And you can put on as little or as much as you'd like. And like I said, I used these green leaves because I was going with my inspiration shot. By the way, I think that was like a $70 pumpkin or something that they wanted for that. So I was happy with my dollar pumpkin and my little napkin and my Mod Podge. So I thought it came out really super cute. So here is everything that I did for these first few projects. And there you have the pumpkins flipped around. So here we go with DIY number 4. So for this, we are using a Dollar Tree calendar, and I'm going to be using some of the little miniature pictures on the back, as well as some tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree, some magnets from Dollar Tree, and my Gorilla Glue. I have a link to Unicorn Dust Designs in my description box because I totally stole this idea from Sammy because I absolutely loved it and had to try it. So I cut out the designs that I wanted to use. I'm gluing my tumbling tower blocks together, some wood glue for that long-term bond, and the hot glue for that immediate hold so that we can keep working with our project. If you're just doing this at home, you can totally just go with the wood glue, and Elmer's would probably work as well. I just use the hot glue to help keep my project moving along for filming purposes, and because I have no patience. But anyway, I'm using Mod Podge. This is just regular matte Mod Podge to secure my designs to my tumbling tower blocks, and look how cute they are already, you guys. So then I came in with some jute cord, and I'm just gonna wrap that around the tumbling tower block edge just behind the image. Now these images were a little tiny bit too large for my tumbling tower blocks, so the jute cord just helped to finish it off without any kind of overlap. I did have somebody suggest to me that I could have sanded it off, but if I were to do that in this instance, it would have taken away some of the words, so I chose not to. So to cover up my little seam at the top, I just tied a little knot and glued that on. I had tried to come up with a little bow at first, but it was just too heavy for this tiny little thing. So I glued on my magnet, and that was all I needed to do. So I've zoomed in here so you can see a little bit closer up what I was doing. Started at the top in the center and worked my way around on all four sides, and then I did trim it at the top, and then I started over again for my second row. I just wanted everything to sit really nice and flat on top, and I knew I was going to be covering up that seam anyway, so that's why I went ahead and decided to clip it here, and I did the same thing on all four of these. So secured that down, and then I started right behind that row with my second row of jute cord, and this jute cord is from Walmart, by the way. And so I just went right around for my second row, and then went ahead and did another little knot at the top with a separate little piece of the jute cord. So there you are. I just tied a simple little knot, trimmed it down until it was the way that I wanted it, and then I just secured it with some hot glue at the top of my piece. And here they are, all four of them all done. You could do as many of these as you want. They are super, super cute. I love them. So here we go with DIY number 5. So for this, I had thrifted some items. These are from the Goodwill. You can see I got this for 99 cents. It was like a pottery piece. And this one had, again, 99 cents. It just had a shape to it that made me think of a pumpkin. And so I was like, this is perfect. So I'm using my home decor chalk paint, and that is sheepskin. And then I'm using my Waverly chalk paint and celery for this. So I'm just going to get everything nice and cleaned up, get my stickers off. I'll give it all a good wipe down. I've got my little baby wipes there that I love to use for my projects, just to keep things clean. And I also use it for wrapping up my paintbrushes. That was a trick that I learned from Heidi Somble. Just if you are going to be reusing a paintbrush and you're just waiting for coats of paint to dry, for instance, you can wrap up your paintbrushes in a little baby wipe, and it keeps it nice and moist until you are ready to put on your next coat. I just thought that was a neat trick. Otherwise, you can always wrap it up in cellophane. That's another thing that I've done in the past, is just use cellophane. So here I'm coming in with the sheepskin chalk paint. I love this color, you guys. It's a really nice cream color. And this is by Folk Art, their home decor chalk paint. Here you go. I'm wrapping up my paintbrush, as I was talking about. So I'm going to let that dry. And while that's drying, I'm going to use the celery on my little, I'm just going to call it a pumpkin, because that's what I've decided that it is, or a gourd. I guess it could be considered a gourd since I'm painting it green. And I ended up giving each of these pieces, I believe it was 3 coats total. And of course I used my heat gun in between, because no patience for waiting for paint to dry. But once those were all covered the way that I wanted, I thought maybe I would come in with a little trim at the bottom of this, and quickly decided that I didn't like it. So I was kind of like, let's get rid of that, and we'll just cover it back up with the sheepskin again. I just wasn't a fan. I thought I might like a nice little edge on it to match what is going to be the top, but I don't know, it was feeling very 80s to me. I grew up in the 80s, and it was just reminding me of my mom's false craft pattern that she had for some reason, I don't know. But I did decide to come in with the sheepskin on the celery and just do some dry brushing on that to give that a little bit more texture and interest. So that's what I did there, and that helped to tie the pieces together really nicely. So now I'm coming in with this ribbon. It's definitely not a burlap, but it makes me think of that for some reason. It's got a lot of gold running through it. This is a ribbon I'd gotten from Costco last Christmas, or maybe a couple of Christmases ago. I just love the Costco ribbon. I think it's such a great deal. You get 30 yards for something like $7. It's amazing. So if you have a Costco or a Sam's Club or a BJ's, I think they all probably carry ribbon around this time of year, so be on the lookout for it because it's usually a really good deal, and they've got really nice ribbon. So there's my little ribbon. I love this piece, absolutely in love with it. And so I've got my little pedestal, my little pumpkin, and I'll be putting some flowers in it that you'll see in the little ensemble that I'll show you in a little bit. So here we go with DIY number 6. So this is my inspiration picture. These I found at Hobby Lobby. I don't know how much they were, so sorry, I didn't remember to look at that. But I'm gonna use a Dollar Tree pumpkin and some hula skirts. I'll be using hot glue. There you go, my hot glue. I was a little optimistic showing you 3 pumpkins. I ended up only doing 1 because it ended up taking a lot more time than I had anticipated. But essentially I'm sectioning off pieces of the hula skirt and I am braiding that to start. So I've got 6 strands and I'm using 2 strands in each of my 3 strands for the braid. Hopefully that's making sense, but you can see what I'm doing here. And I'm just gonna braid that all the way down. And then once I have it braided, I pull it off of the twine that it's attached to, and I just hot glue that. And I had hot glued the bottom when I was done braiding it as well, just to hold it in place. So that's what it looks like once it's all done. And here are all my strands. And then I'm just gonna cut off the ends at the bottom of each of my braids just to tidy that up a little bit. So once that's ready to go, now if you do this project, you guys, you're gonna wanna paint the pumpkin first. I had every intention of painting my pumpkin first. Here I'm just taking off the stem and that little sucker was stuck. So I ended up using my pliers, I'm pretty sure, no, actually those were my wire cutters that I used instead of pliers. But anyway, I finally got that stem out of there, and I meant to paint this before I started in with my raffia or hula skirt or whatever you want to call this. But I was so excited to get started on it that I just completely had a brain hiccup and dove right in. And I had several of these strands on here when I realized, you wanted to paint that, but yeah, live and learn, right? So if you try this, just make sure you paint the pumpkin first. So I was trying to figure out the best way of doing this. At first I thought, I would just leave all the strands on to see how to set them down once I had them all on, but it just wasn't, they were getting in the way. So I went ahead and trimmed those off. And that was where I realized, you silly, you were supposed to paint this first. I don't know if you saw me pause and look at it for a second. And I was like, well, you know what, let me try and keep going. Maybe I can get it so that the raffia is tight enough next to itself that it won't show with the orange. So yeah, no, I should have quit while I was ahead and gone ahead and painted the pumpkin at that point, because at the point where I finally realized I need to do it, it just became a much bigger challenge. So do yourself a favor and paint the pumpkin first. So as things started tightening up, I was just cutting the braids at a little bit of an angle. And what was neat about the raffia was that it wasn't just unraveling. For the most part, it was staying braided the way that I had set it. So that was very helpful in doing this. I'm just cutting off the ends, tucking them in where they will fit, just kind of lining them up in there and then gluing them down with the hot glue. So here I'm trying to press it all together, and I'm taking a look at it and trying to decide, yeah, I was like, nope, I need to paint it. I didn't put you through the torment of watching me paint this thing, because I was like moving the little braids around and trying to paint in between. So it's just a much cleaner look having the pumpkin, this nice neutral cream color behind the raffia, rather than having that orange peeking out. So I'm just going to keep going around and getting my raffia or hula skirt, whatever you want to call it. I think it's the same material that's used. I think that the hula skirts are made with raffia. I could be mistaken, but it seems like raffia to me. So I just kept going around until I got it all filled in. So now you could leave it like this, and I think this is actually really pretty even just as it is. So I guess I have a couple of more strands I'm going to fit in there. But because my inspiration picture had those twigs going around it, I did end up doing some twigs of my own as well. And I don't know, I thought I was kind of clever with how I did that, but give me a second and I'll show you exactly what I did. But like I said, you could leave it like that if you so choose. Oh, and here I'm picking out a stem. So these are from the Dollar Tree. These are the little birch wood stems. I think they are adorable. I love them. I was so excited when I found them at my Dollar Tree. So just securing that on with some hot glue. And again, you could leave it like that, but I decided to use this broomstick that I'd gotten last year. It used to smell like cinnamon, and it's kind of pretty much lost its scent. So I figured I would just pull it apart and use pieces of this to create the twig look that's going around the pumpkin like we saw in the inspiration picture. So now I'm just testing out how bendable or pliable this is, and parts of this are much more pliable than others. So I just had to really play with it, and then trying to figure out how best to attach it. So I was using hot glue, and then ultimately I realized that if I were to push it down into the pumpkin, because this is a carvable pumpkin, so you can see now I'm using a skewer to create a hole in which I can stick the ends of my twigs. It was just helping it to stay that much better. So just using my skewer to create that hole, cutting off, I'm using my wire cutters, my floral wire cutters, to trim off the twigs, and then just tucking that in, and then I do secure it with more hot glue. And I'm just kind of trimming that up because it was kind of sticking out here and there. So I made a really big mess doing this, you guys, but it was fun. So leave me a comment. Would you have left it just with the braids, or do you like it with these extra elements with the twigs? What would you have done? So there you have it. Here we go with DIY number 7. So for this, I have a Dollar Tree floor mat and some stencils that I cut off of my Silhouette Cameo, and now I have them all situated on my floor mat and ready to start with the paint. So I'm coming in with, I think this was the Oatmeal. I'm pretty sure it was Oatmeal by Folk Art. It's the Home Decor chalk paint by Folk Art. And I was a little nervous when I first started painting this, you guys, because I didn't know if it was going to bleed. I didn't know if the paint was going to work on this because it is so nappy, but it was awesome. Look at the sharp edges on these letters. I was so happy with it. This mat really took some paint, you know, and I shouldn't be surprised because it is a floor mat. It's meant to be absorbent, right? But it really was very easy to work with. I was shocked, really, at how easy it was to work with this. So I came in with my different paint colors. Here I'm showing you the fern that I came in with, and it unfortunately wasn't dark enough. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to do because, of course, now I've pulled off my stencil. So I knew that I wanted to fill in my pumpkin with the orange, and as I'm painting it, I'm realizing it's really easy to keep control over where you're putting your paint on this. So I figured, okay, well, I've had a good time painting the pumpkin. I'm going to try it just going over my lines with my Irish chalk paint, and it was so super easy, you guys. I highly encourage you to try this. It was really an easy project in the end, and you can use whatever stencil you have. And here it is all finished. So here we go with DIY number 8. So I have my gold Sharpie paint pen again, another Dollar Tree pumpkin. I've got my sheepskin chalk paint from Home Decor. This is Imperial Red. And then I have my, I'm trying to remember, I think that was either black or Java. You guys, I'm trying to remember what project this was. I think I'm losing my mind. It's so late. Okay, so what are we doing? What are we making? All right, so I'm coming in with my sheepskin chalk paint and giving this a nice coat all over. Oh, I know what I was doing. This is my Mackenzie Childs project. And I couldn't remember. What her name was originally, or what the designer's name was originally. So I'm coming in with my gold paint marker, and I am going to be drawing a grid here. And that was black chalk paint that I showed you before, but I ended up not using black. I ended up using Java instead, because I wanted to create a burgundy color to use for my checker pattern on this. And I decided that the chocolate brown, the Java color, was going to help me get there with the red a little bit better than adding black. And there you go, Mackenzie Childs. I pulled this from my other video, you guys, and I don't know how to remove that. So it was, I hadn't been able to remember what the name was when I first did this video. So then I remembered what it was, and yeah. So I am just creating my pattern on this. I did have somebody ask me if you need an odd or an even number of bumps, if you will, or, you know, to make your checkered pattern, and it is an even number that you need. So you want an even number, and I was just double checking myself there to make sure that I had what I needed. So here I'm showing you putting the black aside, pulling out the Java. I'm going to mix together my red with a little bit of the brown and create the burgundy color that I'm hoping for. I want to just thank all of you for watching and continuing to support me and my channel. I just absolutely adore you guys. I love interacting with you. I appreciate all of the comments. I do my best to respond to every single comment that you guys make, you know, on the videos. And just also want to remind you that if you create any of these projects and if you'd like to send them my way, feel free to email me at craftedbycorie@gmail.com, and because I love seeing what you make. And it actually inspires me as well. And it makes my day when I see something pop up in my inbox with one of your projects. You can also share it with me on Instagram. Just tag me on Instagram, also craftedbycorie. And if you'd like for me to share your project in an upcoming video, just give me that permission. Let me know that that's what you'd like me to do. You don't have to if you're not comfortable having me share it and you just want to share it with me for my eyes only. That's fine too. But do make sure that you give me permission if you'd like for me to share it, and just explicitly let me know that you would like for me to share it, because I'm not comfortable putting your work out there unless I have your permission. So I will not put your work out there unless you explicitly tell me, hey, yes, please go ahead and share this. I would love for you to share it. So here we are with the checker pattern starting to come together, and there it is once it's all done. So now I'm going to come in back with the gold paint marker again, and I'm going to outline all of my checkers. But please do leave me a comment and let me know what you think of the videos, and let me know if there's something that you'd like to see that I haven't done yet. I'm always up for a good challenge. And here's another idea. If you have something that you come across that's an inspiration photo for you and you'd like to see me try to dupe that, email me that and I will be more than happy to give it a go and come up with a way to make it on a budget. Because I love that challenge of seeing something really, really pretty, especially something that's high end and expensive, and recreating it for, you know, dollars or pennies. Okay, so I'm going to be using another one of those little birch wood pieces for my stem. I'm going to hot glue that down. And then I'm going to be using this checkerboard, oh my goodness, you guys, I need to go to sleep. This buffalo check ribbon, and I'm just going to tie a simple knot. I'm sorry that I'm off screen there, but just a simple knot, tying that around, and then I'm going to dovetail my ends. So just folding the ribbon in half and cutting it at an angle. And that's what they call dovetailing. It just makes the ends nice and pretty. And that's it. Give me a big thumbs up if you like it. All right, here we go with DIY number 9. So for this one, using my sheepskin chalk paint again, I have a few pumpkins from the Dollar Tree, different shapes and sizes. Then I also have a thrifted, I don't know what this was, it might have been a candle holder, I'm not sure, maybe based to a hurricane. And then a Dollar Tree little vase and some scraps from some paint sticks that I had cut before. And then I'm going to be using some Dollar Tree picks, floral picks. So I'm just setting in the little scrap pieces of paint sticks because I wanted to have a solid base for that little glass vase to sit on. It fits in this base piece but not quite as solidly as I wanted. So I just wanted to have a real nice solid base for it to sit on, so it wasn't going to move at all. So I'm going to go ahead and paint my Dollar Tree pumpkin. This is the carvable pumpkin. Painting that with the sheepskin. I think I gave this 2 coats of chalk paint, if I'm not mistaken. Just wanted to have a nice solid coverage on it. Of course, I used my heat gun in between because, again, no patience. I did set it aside to let it dry and then went ahead and painted one of the other pumpkins. Now I'm going to be using my pumpkin chalk paint, and of course I just painted the other 2 pumpkins cream, and now I'm painting the cream pumpkin orange. Yeah, it's just the way that I wanted everything, and I wanted these in a certain order, so it's just the way things work sometimes. Using my heat gun. So I had secured my little vase to my base. I think I missed showing you that, but I just secured it with a lot of hot glue, and now I'm coming in and painting it with the Java chalk paint, which is like a nice rich chocolate brown color. Looking at that is making me want a piece of chocolate. So coming in and just making sure that that's nice and covered, and there it is once I have both coats of chalk paint on there. So now I'm going to take my pumpkins. Everything is now dry, and what's nice about those ceramic pumpkins is they've got holes in the bottoms of them. So I did get this idea from Olivia's Romantic Home. She has a fantastic channel. If you have not already checked her out, I highly recommend it. So I am using a skewer to help put my pumpkin in there. I've got the floral foam down in the bottom, and then I will just drop my pumpkin in there with the skewer just to get it solid in there. I did not secure the floral foam. I just chose not to. I'm not really sure why I chose not to. Maybe I was thinking I might be able to use the base for another season at some point. I'm not really sure, but I didn't. So now I'm coming in with all of my Dollar Tree picks. I am cutting them down into pieces because I find them easier to work with that way, and I can kind of place them a little bit more the way that I want them by doing that. You will see every single time practically that I use any kind of a pick, whether it be from Dollar Tree, from the Hobby Lobby, whatever, I'm always pulling these things apart, you guys. It is rare that I use it in its original form all in one piece. Maybe if I'm doing a flower arrangement in a vase, then maybe I would use the pick in its entirety without pulling it apart, but generally when crafting, I'm pulling those puppies apart and just placing them in the way that I want them. Again, this is not difficult. Anybody can do this. I'm literally just tucking these in under the pumpkin and into the floral foam that's sitting in our base. And I'm just going around and tucking things in that are pleasing to my eye. So now I'm taking my second pumpkin and I'm using some hot glue. I'm sorry it's out of frame. And just securing that, putting the little hole over the stem and doing that again with that third pumpkin. And there we've got our little topiary. So I decided I wanted to just have a little bow around the base. I'm sorry, you can't really see what I'm doing, but I literally just wrapped it around the base and tied a bow and just secured it a little bit with some hot glue. So there you can see it. Let me know what you think. And here it is on my table. You can see all the projects that we just worked on. So there's the little pumpkin with the flower arrangement in it on its little pedestal. I love that piece, you guys. The little braided pumpkin is there as well. Super sweet. Got the topiary. Here's our Mackenzie Childs inspired pumpkin. And you can also see the chargers on the table there as well. Oh, and the runner, the table runner. There are also some other projects that are going to be coming up. So here we go with DIY number 10. So for this, using some hot glue, using my Gorilla wood glue, also using some vases from the Dollar Tree or candle holders. I'm not sure what they are, to be honest, but they're gonna be candle holders for this. Also using 3 of these mini crates from the Dollar Tree. These are little, they call them dessert thingies. I think they're like double shot glasses. They come in a pack of 6 from the Dollar Tree as well. And then my wax from Bear in dark, as well as a bunch of Dollar Tree picks and some floral foam. That was also from the Dollar Tree. And I really wanted to show you the floral foam for some reason, not sure why. So I'm starting out with my little crates, and I apologize for the lighting on this, you guys. I don't know what happened. It does not last for very long with that strobe effect, so it'll get better really quick, I promise. But I started out by gluing together my 3 little crates using the wood glue for that permanent long-term bond, and then also a little bit of hot glue just for that quick hold so that we can go ahead and keep on working on the projects without having to wait for the wood glue to dry. So once those were all attached, I came in with my Bear wax in dark, and then my little Kleenex hand towel that I love to use for my projects, as you know, and just giving that a good coating, and then a wipe down. I did the bottom as well, you know, because I have to have everything covered. I did not worry about the inside because nobody's going to see that. So the Gorilla glue, regular Gorilla glue, I'm now using on the bottom of that little double shot glass, and I'm going to glue this again with some hot glue for that quick hold to the bottom of one of my little vases / candle holders. These are going to be candle holders. Now I'm using my old kitchen knife that is now part of my crafting tool arsenal to cut down the floral foam so that it'll fit into the little crates. Just positioning that where I want it, and it's also going to serve as a little stand for the other 2 candle holders. I wanted to have a difference in height, which is why I did the center one the way I did with that double shot glass. It just helped that to stand a little bit taller than the 2 on the sides. So you've got a little bit more height in the middle. So now I am securing the floral foam down to the base of the box. And I'm putting it on the base of the box thinking that it might melt the foam a little bit less if it has a second to cool before I stuck the foam on there, as opposed to putting it directly onto the foam. Not sure if that's valid or not, but I don't know. In my mind, I felt like it would work better, so that's what I did. And also securing the 2 candle holders now to the floral foam as well, once I get the foam in there. So securing that one, maybe, yep. And then I forgot to secure the middle one to the base of the box, and so I'm about to show you, and then I'm going to be like, oh yeah, like, oops, I need to secure that one too. So just securing that with some hot glue as well. And just making sure everything is centered. So now you can see everything is good to go, and you can see the difference in the height there. So now I'm going to come in with my Dollar Tree picks. Here I go, cutting them all apart again, just like I told you I would. So just making sure that the stems are long enough to be able to place where I want them, but not so long that they become an issue when I try to get them into this little crate or these little crates. And I'm just coming in with various colors. Again, just wanting to make it pleasing to the eye. And this is such a versatile project, you guys. You can do it for any holiday, any season. I am not hot gluing any of these in, so I could pull this all apart come the winter holidays. If you celebrate Hanukkah, you could pull this all apart and do it with blues and whites and silvers, and it would be absolutely gorgeous. For Christmas time, you could do greenery, you could do, you know, the typical red and green with berries and things of that nature. Or you could do that frosty blue color that I absolutely love with whites and just make it look snowy and pretty. And looking forward to the winter holidays. But here you go. This is what I came up with. And here it is on my counter with some candles in it. Give me a big thumbs up and let me know what you think. So here we go with DIY number 11. So for this one, we are going to be using a whole bunch of Manila rope. Yes, I remembered because I kept wanting to call it Milan rope. And again, I pulled this from a past video, so I didn't know how to get rid of those words. But yes, it is Manila rope. So I'm taking 3 long strands, I believe they were 9 feet each, and I'm braiding these. And these are going to serve as the base for a garland that we are going to put together. Knotting the bottom of it when I get to the end of my braid. And then I wanted to show you, I mentioned the Costco ribbon before, you guys. This is Costco ribbon that I picked up, right before I did this project. So maybe a month ago. But the ribbon is definitely out right now for the holidays, gearing up. And 30 feet, you guys, for $6.99. Here, I'm going to show you. Not feet, sorry, 30 yards. No, oh my gosh, 50 yards. 50 yards, not even 30 yards, it's 50 yards. I think 30 yards is what you get at Hobby Lobby. But 50 yards for $6.99. You can't beat that. It's awesome, and I love their ribbon. So now I'm showing you the various picks that I'm using for my garland. Some of these are from Dollar Tree. A lot of them I picked up at Joann's. And here I go, cutting them all down to pieces again. So I basically find my center, which is up at the top near my hand. Right where my hand is actually the center there. And I'm going to make it symmetrical. So whatever I do on the left, I'm also going to do on the right. So I'm just going to work my way down. And I'm not making it super full. You certainly can make this much more full if you choose to, but I know that I have a relatively narrow mantle and I was trying to be cognizant of that. So I figured I would do it just enough to cover up my base with the Milan rope, and I could always add more in later once I had it on the mantle if I decided it needed more. And I found actually it was perfect. I was very happy with it. So it doesn't take a lot for this to get filled out. So now I'm creating my bow, and I believe I had 6 loops on either side, you guys. So you just wrap this around and around and around on itself, and then I used a chenille stem to secure it in the middle. Chenille stem, pipe cleaner, whatever you want to call it. I just used a neutral color. I have a whole bunch of these from the days when I was wreath happy. I used to make a ton of wreaths, and so I had all kinds of pipe cleaners. So using a second ribbon color that it's this really pretty sparkly rose gold color to complement my little neutral plaid, and I'm just loving this. So after I did the bow, I came in to create tails that I'm actually going to run down the length of the garland, and I'm just going to be tucking it in here and there. I did end up using wire for this, and I'm sorry if it's hard to see. It was challenging to get this at an angle where you could see what I was doing. But you can see the wire that I have there in front of me, just between my hands there. But just it was cutting off little pieces of wire and then securing them almost like twist ties, if you will, to the garland. And here it is on my mantle before I decorated around it. And here it is with some of the other decor. So here we go with DIY number 12. So we're going to be using another one of these witch's brooms for this project. And essentially I am going to cut off the handle of the broomstick. So I just used my wire cutters to do this and to trim that all off. So now I'm also going to trim the bottom. I wanted to be kind of a feather shape. I had seen something at Joann's that inspired me to create this. I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, that's really pretty. I'm like, I bet I can make something like that. So that was what inspired the shape. And these flowers are also from Joann's. I had gotten them, I want to say it was 40% off that day. I'm just cutting them apart as per usual. I had decided where I wanted them, and now I'm coming back in with my hot glue and I'm going to tuck them in and just secure them all down. For this, it was necessary to use the hot glue because they were not going to stay just tucked in. They needed that glue to hold them in. So now I'm coming in with a different type of flower. I'm just layering things on to give it more interest and dimension, and I feel like I say texture all the time, but I really don't have another way of describing what I'm doing. But you don't want it to all be, well, I suppose you could have it all uniform. It would be very pretty, but it just makes it more interesting to give it a little bit a variation with the flowers and with the colors, and these are all neutral tones that complement each other, but they're all slightly different, right? So it just enhances what you're doing. So I'm coming in now with these sprays of other flowers, and I think I had these left over from Hobby Lobby from a couple of years ago. These were already in my stash. And this is just coming in around the outer edge and creating more, what is the word I'm looking for? Volume. Volume's not quite the word I'm looking for, but I just wanted to broaden it a little bit. Now I was feeling like it was looking too bridal. So I wanted to come in with a little bit more of the fall color tones. So I brought in some of these other flowers that I think I did get these from Joann's. Sorry, you guys, I'm having trouble remembering where I got what at this point. But usually I've picked things up at either Dollar Tree, Joann's, Hobby Lobby, or Michael's. Those are my 4 spots. Oh yeah, apparently I had been calling it something. I don't know. I was talking about something, and apparently I meant to call it garlands. Oh, I think I had been talking about how expensive the garlands tend to be. I've seen them for sale for like $130, and I'm referring to the garland that I created before that was on the fireplace mantle. Yeah, just crazy expensive, and you can do it for so much less if you have the inclination to do that. So making my bow again, I'm doing this very similarly, but instead of doing the ribbons apart, I brought the ribbons together. Here I'm dovetailing my edges. I had just wrapped them around and around and around, basically a big loop, just wrapping it around itself, secured it in the middle with my chenille stem, and then pulled my little loops out to create the bow. So now I'm creating tails for the bow. I basically just cut 2 lengths of the ribbon, and I'm tying it around the center over the top of the chenille stem. And I'm making sure that that chenille stem or pipe cleaner is straddling it, because I'm going to use that to secure it to the broomstick. So you can see me sticking in the ends of the pipe cleaner there. And I'll just twist it off at the back, and then also create a hanger with those little ends. So I'll create a loop. I'm twisting it off, and then I'm going to connect the ends together and twist those together to create a loop that will serve as my hanger. I know it's hard to see what I'm doing there, but hopefully what I'm saying makes sense. And then I'm going to fluff up my bow and get that the way that I like it. And then the ends I will place and tuck in where I want those as well. But first I'm going to dovetail those. And again, you just fold your ribbon in half and you cut it on an angle. So lower on the creased side and higher on the wire edge side. And that makes your little dovetail. And I will end up going back in and securing the ribbon where I place it with just a little teeny touch of hot glue, just so that it doesn't move on me, because it's already moving for me here. And here it is on my front door, and I absolutely love this piece, you guys. This is one of my favorite projects so far, I think. I just love this. It looks so high-end and pretty. And I think it cost maybe $12 to make. So here we go with DIY number 13. Okay, for this one, we are using a Dollar Tree vase, some Mod Podge, doesn't matter what kind because it won't be seen. Our creepy cloth from the Dollar Tree, going to be using 1 table tennis ball, also from the Dollar Tree, and my Sharpie paint marker. So I got a lot of laughs with this project, especially from some of the comments. You guys made me laugh so hard. I loved it. This little guy, yeah, he was kind of weird, and some of the comparisons that you guys shared with me, it tickled me to no end. I just thought it was hysterical. So thank you for sharing your comments on that. But right now I'm just trying to figure out how on earth I'm going to use this creepy cloth. I know that I want to be making a mummy. I'm not really certain how to do it just yet. So I'm messing around with the cloth, and then I took it off, I folded it lengthwise, and then I gave it another shot. And then that seemed to do the trick. So I'm just wrapping it around and around. And it's definitely looking a little bit neater this time, and more what I had in mind when I was putting this together. And it was my daughter actually who wanted me to make this mummy, so this was inspired by Elena, so you have her to thank. So just coating everything with Mod Podge now that I know what I'm doing with the creepy cloth. and then coming back in with the creepy cloth to place it on the Mod Podge and just get that secured. And then while it is still wet, I'll just make sure that I create a little space for the eyes. So just creating a little bit of a space there. Now I'm going to take my table tennis ball and I'm going to cut it along the seam so that I'm cutting it in half. Just want to be really careful not to cut yourself if you do something like this. I was trying very hard to keep my fingers out of the way, and I was trying to cut away from myself as much as possible, so just be careful if you're going to do that. Coming in with my paint marker to make my irises? Yes, my irises, and I'm leaving the pupils white. And I'm going to tuck my eyeballs in to the creepy cloth and then just secure. Oh my gosh, somebody told me it looked like Homer Simpson, and that's all I can think of now. Oh, too funny. Or was it Bart? I forget. I don't know. Apparently it looks like one of the Simpsons, and I totally see it now. Okay, so here we go with DIY number 14. I am fresh. I took a break and went to bed. So new day here, guys, but new project using my Sharpie paint marker in black, some Dollar Tree little pots that came to 3 in a pack. I have my white fabric that I have left over from another project, some skewers. I'm pretty sure these came from Dollar Tree. And then I also have my linen white chalk paint, and I had shown you some Christmas ornaments that you can decorate yourself. Those were from Hobby Lobby, and I have them left over from a couple of years ago, I think. So I'm giving my little pots a coat of white paint and setting those aside to dry. And now I'm just using something round in this instance. I have a pizza screen that I haven't done a project with yet. So using that as kind of a guide to help me with a rough circle. It does not need to be perfect. I don't recommend doing this on a surface that you care about. I'm using my craft knife on my table, but this is an old table and it's got paint on it, it's banged up, so I'm not so worried about that, but I should probably have pulled out my cutting mat. So was just trying to get myself started on this circle and coming back in and using my scissors to cut out the rest of my round. And then I ended up cutting out 2 additional circles that were slightly larger than that one with the rest of my fabric. So now I'm taking 3 of the little ornaments and 3 of the skewers, and I'm just going to show you what I'm going to be doing to make our little ghosts. So we're going to be just draping the fabric over that. So showing you my floral foam that I had picked up from Joann's. It was $6 in the package, and I believe it was $5 for the package. So I was really happy with that deal because normally they're $1 a piece at Dollar Tree. So going to just try and figure out what size I need to cut down my foam so that it fits down in my little pots. And I'm using my old kitchen knife that I mentioned as part of my crafting arsenal now, and just cutting these little pieces of foam down to size. So I'm going to tuck those down inside the pots, and I'm going to make sure that they're tucked in really nice, and then I'm going to come back in with my hot glue and make sure that they are all in there securely. So I'm flipping my pots over. I'm going to take my skewers and just stick it right into that foam, and that's going to serve as our little base. Now, I did notice that the Dollar Tree has their plastic ornaments out just like this. These are glass, so I don't recommend using the glass ones with little kids, but you could certainly pick some up at the Dollar Tree and use the plastic ones, and then this will be a really safe project for doing with kids if you decide that you want to do this with your kids or if you have grandkids. It's a fun little project that they can get ready for Halloween. So coming in with my black Sharpie paint marker and making my faces for my ghosts. The paint did go through my fabric onto the ornament, so if you want to be a little bit cleaner with it than I was, I would recommend putting something under the fabric as you draw the face. I did it this way because I wanted to make sure that the face was where I wanted it to land on the ornament while it was put together. Hopefully that makes sense. But you could certainly slip a little something underneath the fabric, a piece of paper or something of that nature to protect the ornament. I just went back in with some rubbing alcohol and cleaned off the paint. It came right off with the rubbing alcohol. So that was how I fixed my little faux pas. And then this is the one that was a little bit shorter or smaller circle than the others. So I wanted to just cut down my skewer, and I knew all along that I was going to do this. I just wanted to wait until I had it the way I wanted it before I decided to cut that down to size. So now I've got 3 little ghosts, and they are a little complimentary set, and I love that they're different heights. So here we go with DIY number 15. So for this, we're using a Dollar Tree little round vase. Also some napkins. I think I picked these up from the Dollar Tree, although I couldn't swear to it. And then some Mod Podge. So similar to what we did on the pumpkin, we are going to be Mod Podging these sunflowers onto the vase, and it's going to make a really pretty candle holder. So I'm coming in with my little paintbrush with just water on it, and I'm going around the designs where I want to be cutting. So this, I don't think I went into this before, but this helps you with ripping the napkin where you want to rip it. Just wetting it a little bit around the edges gives you the control to tear it where you want it to tear. So coming in with my Mod Podge, I am using the matte Mod Podge for this because I wanted it to have less of a glossy sheen. So that's what I've chosen to use. You can certainly use a gloss Mod Podge if you choose, but coming back over it with the Mod Podge over top, and because this is curved, I am going to need to snip my napkin. So I'm just trying to decide how I want it to overlap itself, and I'm going to come in with my scissors and just clip it and then lay that down. See how I put it down underneath the one side, and then I'm bringing the other side down over top of that, just using a healthy amount of Mod Podge to help me get that laid down nicely. And if you get little wrinkles in your napkin, you guys, it is not the end of the world. I just do my best to get things to lay as flat as possible. It's not always perfect, and depending on the design that you're using, sometimes it's a lot less evident than others. So you just do your best and just try to lay it down as flat as possible, but understand that you may get a little wrinkle here or there. So I'm just going to keep going around my vase and applying additional flowers in the pattern that makes me happy, that looks pleasing to my eye. And there you go. It's still wet, so you can see a lot of the white. That'll all dry clear. But it's coming together nicely. So once I have everything applied the way I want it, I am going to come back in with another coat of Mod Podge to seal it all in. If you wanted to be a little extra, once it dries, you can come through and sand it and then do another coat of Mod Podge. It just all depends on what you would like to do. So here we go with DIY number 16. So for this, I'm using some more of that burlap that we used earlier. I also have some more white fabric left over. And I'm showing you some needles that I picked up. At first I thought I might sew some of this, but then I opted not to. But those are doll making needles that I was just showing you. And then I've got some fiber fill and a Dollar Tree placemat. That red circle is a placemat. I also have my little buttons there that I didn't hold up and show you, but those are from the Dollar Tree. So I've folded my fabric in half and I'm just cutting it along the bottom there. So I've got 2 pieces and I'm showing you that I'm gonna cut an oval shape. So really just the shape of a face, if you will, a rough outline of a face. So once I had the one side cut, I folded it over in half so that I could cut it the same way on the other side, and that's just going to help it be symmetrical. So now I've folded down everything, folded down that edge, and I'm gonna come around and hot glue everything but that bottom edge that I had folded over. I wanna leave one side open so you can see I'm turning it right side out. And you could sew this, you totally could sew this. I had recently done pillows with hot glue and they worked out really well, so I figured why not? I'm not gonna drag out my sewing machine, I'm just gonna go ahead and do this. So I've stuffed it, and now I'm gonna come back in with some of my burlap to cover this. And I had thought about just starting with the burlap, but then I decided that the fiber fill would probably not be covered sufficiently because this burlap does have rather large holes, if you will. It's not a really tight weave on this burlap. So because the weave is a little bit loose, I figured it would be better to start with a regular fabric and then come back in with the burlap. If you have burlap that's got a tighter weave on it, you could certainly skip that first step and go right to the burlap. So I am tying down what will be the top, and then I am going to fasten the bottom as well. And I had just attached the burlap to the back with some hot glue. You probably saw that as well. So for the neck area, I'm just using some of this Dollar Tree twine that is wired. And now I'm coming out with my buttons. I'm looking for some that might look like eyes. I settled on the blue ones. So gluing those down with my hot glue. If you don't have a hot glue gun, you could certainly use Elmer's or regular school glue. And now I'm coming back in with a whole bunch of little red buttons that I'm going to use for my mouth. So as you can see, we're putting together a scarecrow. He's coming together nicely. So now I'm going to be using some black sticky felt. This is self-adhesive felt, so it's got a sticky background on it. So cut out a little triangle for the nose, and I'm sticking that on. And I am going to come back in with some extra hot glue just to make sure that's on. But I was looking at his eyes, and I was like, maybe I'll put these little white buttons on there just to give his eyes a little bit more something. I don't know. I thought it'd be cute, so that's what I did. So extra little white buttons on the eyes, and then re-securing his nose a little bit more. He's looking dapper. So now I am going to make him a hat. And as I had explained when I first did this project, if I had had regular black felt, I might have tried to make a hat out of that, but I did not have just plain black felt. So that is why I went with the Dollar Tree placemat, and I'm just undoing it sufficiently until I get it to the width that I want the hat to be, and then I'll come back in and start reconstructing it. So I'm just going to set it down and use my hot glue to start bringing it around and having that edge just stand up on the top of what will be the top of the hat. And so I'll just keep coming around and around with my hot glue and just build up that part of the hat. And I still don't know what that part of the hat is called. If you know what the name of that part of the hat is called, leave me a comment and tell me, because I have absolutely no idea. I know what the brim of the hat is called, but I don't know what this part of the hat is called, and it must have a name. So once I get it as tall as I think I want it for the hat, I twist it again just slightly, and I start building out my brim. So I never cut this, I just kept twisting it or manipulating it the way that I wanted it to be to build the hat the way that I wanted it. And it was looking to me a little bit like a cowboy hat because it definitely wasn't perfectly round, but I thought it was cute the way that it was coming out. And I figured, you know, it's not your typical Scarecrow hat, but I figure, you know, farmers use what they have when they build their scarecrows, so I was okay with it being different. I was thinking of maybe a straw hat, right? But mine just happens to be red. So now I decided I wanted him to be able to stand up on his own. So I'm using these little glass pebbles. These are also from the Dollar Tree. And I'm using an old tin can. It was some sort of soup can or tomato can, I'm not sure. And undoing his neck, I'm gonna slide him right down just like that over the can. And then I'm gonna refasten the tie around his neck. And that's just going to allow him to stand up on his own. So now I'm going to go ahead and secure his hat on there, and that way he'll be good to go. And then I decided I wanted to dress up his hat a little bit, so I came in with a couple of little sunflowers. I'm going to glue those down really well. And then I also came back in with some of the greenery from those sunflowers as well. So I'm just giving it a really good dose of the hot glue so that it doesn't fall off and it's nice and secure. So then I came in with some raffia. And I'm sorry that you cannot see very well what I'm doing here. The hat obviously is in the way, but I'm just tucking some of the raffia up underneath the hat along the edge of his face because he is a straw man, right? So there you go. You can see how I just tucked that up in there, and I use a little bit more hot glue to secure that in. And then I'm going to use more raffia at the back where I had put the burlap together. And I guess you'll get to see the rest of it in a little bit. So DIY 17, here we go. So the wreath form I'm using came from Joann's at the end of the season last year. I think I got it for like $1.50 or something. I was really excited. I have some leftover deco mesh, some new deco mesh, and then some picks from the Dollar Tree. Lots of fun little stuff. And then I also had that tube mesh from the Dollar Tree as well. Got my little creepy spiders and my purple pumpkins here that I'm showing you. So this wreath, oh, and then also some sheer ribbon that had really fun glittery spider webs on it. Some more picks that I'm showing you, those came from Hobby Lobby, and I've had them for a couple of years, I think, at least 1 year. So I've got my cutting mat, my rotary cutter. Now, you guys, I had gotten on this big kick of doing deco mesh wreaths a few years ago, and so I had gone ahead and invested in a lot of these tools. It definitely makes it easier. You don't have to have a rotary cutter to do this. You can use regular scissors. Don't you love my little crushed tomatoes can that is holding my glue sticks that I'm using to hold down my mesh? Because obviously it wants to curl up on me, but I'm going to use that to my advantage, and I'm just going to go ahead and let these little doodads curl up. And I believe I cut these to about 5 inches wide each. I was trying to get as much out of this leftover mesh as I could. And I ended up being able to get 5 of the green rolls out of it and then 10 of the orange. So here they are. I was just counting them up. I've got 5 green and 10 orange. So now I'm going to take my full roll of, I believe this is 10-inch deco mesh, and it's like a burlap and then a purple shiny something running through it. And I am just using these twist ties that are already attached to my wreath form to go around and secure my mesh to the form. And I'm alternating top and bottom and also skipping over every other twist tie. Hopefully that makes sense. And then I'll come back around for a second round and I'll catch all of the ones that I missed. And that's just my way of trying to help it be as full as possible without looking too uniform, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. But if you don't have a wreath form that has these twist ties already attached, you can certainly use a regular wreath form from the Dollar Tree and just use pipe cleaners or the chenille stems, whatever you want to call them. I used to do that all the time with the regular wreath forms, so you don't have to have this fancy kind with them already attached. In fact, sometimes I like doing it myself better because I can position the twist ties or the chenille stems where I want them. So sometimes on these wreaths that already have them on there, they're like too close together or they're not where I want it. So I actually sometimes like building that myself. So nothing wrong with using a regular wreath form and doing that. So here I had taken 2 orange and 1 green of my little curly thingies that I had created, and it was just too long fastening them in the middle, so I ended up taking them out of there, folding them in half again, and then securing them in the middle. And I'll be showing you again, so hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit better. So taking it, folding it in half, finding the center, and then I'm going to secure it down in the middle of all of that. And I'm just going to do that all the way around. So hopefully you can see what it is that I'm doing. So now I am taking the tube mesh, and thank you to my subscriber who let me know what this was called. The first time I was saying it reminded me of those Chinese finger traps. It made me laugh. But yes, so this is from the Dollar Tree. I have it in the green and the orange, and I was amazed, you guys, it matched the color for my deco mesh that I'd gotten, I think from Hobby Lobby or Joann's a few years ago, matched the color perfectly, like to a T. You would have thought that I had bought them together at the same time. So right there I was trying to decide whether I was going to leave the tube mesh whole and just go around the wreath with it, or if I was going to cut it. I ultimately decided to cut it. I just was creating a big loop with it and pinching it in the middle again, and then securing that the same way that I did with the other large loops that I had done with the deco mesh. And I'm going in and securing those to all of the places where I didn't have the larger loopies. So now I'm coming in with the sheer ribbon, and I'm going to go around the wreath the same way that I did with that base. And isn't that fun with all that glitter? I don't know. I love Farmhouse, you guys, but as I've said, I do like myself a little bit of bling. So things that are glittery sometimes make me very happy, even though it kind of gets all over everything sometimes. But I was happy with this, and the purple was making me happy too. So now I'm coming in with some of the picks from the Dollar Tree. These are little witches' hats. And I had a whole lot going on here, you guys. This wreath, yeah, it was a little crazy, but I figured it's Halloween, it can be a little bit crazy, right? So coming in with my pumpkins also, and right now I'm just setting things down to figure out where I want them. I wasn't securing them yet, but now I'm gonna come in and start securing things now that they're where I want them. For the pumpkins, those are foam, and so I found that I could just take the little twist ties from the wreath form and twist them up and just press them right into the bottom of my little pumpkins, and they held super secure that way, so I didn't even need to use hot glue. Otherwise, usually I come in and I use my hot glue on all of this type of stuff. With the little picks with the witches' hats, I was just twisting the little chenille stems, or whatever you want to call them, that are built into the wreath form right around the base of those picks. And that worked out well. So now I'm coming in with my spider friends and just placing them around where I want them, and I will use the hot glue to secure these little guys. Okay, so I've torn apart a bunch of my little picks. As you know, I like to tear apart all my picks, and I'm building it back up again the way that I want it. And I'm sorry I'm a little bit off frame here, you guys, but I'm just kind of creating a bouquet of all of the little fun, spooky stuff. So you can see how I've put it back together there. And I'm going to secure it with one of the wreath forms twisties again, and just secure it a little bit more with hot glue. And once I have that all done, just twisting that up again, making the little end of that look pretty. And then I'm just going to bring my ribbon and my curls and everything else around there so that it's nice and neat. And there you go. So here is how everything turned out. Oh, and I did come back in and put a little birdie on my Scarecrow's hat and dirty up his hat a little bit with some chalk paint, just making it a little bit more rustic looking. So here we go with DIY number 18. So this was my inspiration picture, $24.99 on sale at Wayfair. Instead of family, I'm going to be using a welcome sign from the Dollar Tree. I'm also using one of the stretch canvases, also from Dollar Tree, and then a Dollar Tree leaf. Now I'm showing you the burgundy leaves, but I hadn't decided yet whether I wanted to use those or the gold ones that I also picked up. And then I've got the Waverly chalk paint in moss that I'm going to be using as well. So first thing I'm going to do is remove the canvas from the frame. I'm just going to set that aside, and then I'm going to make sure that I get all of those staples out. I am going to be reapplying the canvas to the frame on that same side. So I just want to make sure I've got everything out of the way so when I come back in with my staple gun, I'm not hitting metal and not able to secure it properly. So now I'm going to trim up the canvas so that it's the right size for applying it to that part of the frame, and so it's not going to hang over. And then I'm going to give it a good coat of the moss chalk paint. It did occur to me afterwards that I could have painted it first and then trimmed it, and it might have been a little bit easier to not be going over the edges. But I didn't think about it. So if you do this, just make it a little bit easier on yourself, and you can paint it first and then trim away all of your excess canvas. That'll just save you a little bit of time. So now I thought I was going to be using, this is where I thought I was going to be using the gold paint, and it just wasn't having it. The metal frame did not want to take this paint at all. So I gave up, and I decided to come in with my pumpkin Waverly chalk paint in pumpkin. I think I just said that. So yes, pumpkin chalk paint. And I think I ended up giving this 3 coats of paint. So it definitely took better than the other paint I was using, but it did take 3 coats. So now I'm going to be using the Java chalk paint by Folk Art, and coming in, I only needed 1 coat of this, you guys. It gave really good coverage. So just painted my frame with the Java. And then I missed the video on that, but I just attached my canvas to the back, as I had talked about doing, with my staple gun. So that was once everything was dry. So now I'm coming in, and I did decide ultimately to use the gold leaf. I just felt like it was going to pop a little bit more than the burgundy one. So I'll save the burgundy leaves for another project in the future. So secured that with some hot glue, and now I have 2 little pieces of dowel that I had trimmed off to help our little welcome stand up above the leaf. So I figured out where I needed to secure the little dowel pieces so that it would straddle the leaf nicely and secure that welcome to the canvas. So using a little bit of hot glue directly on the canvas now, and placing the ends of the dowels in those little spots of the hot glue. And there you go. We've got our little 3D welcome sign. Let me know what you think. So here we go with DIY number 19. So for this project, I used a piece of 1x2 that I had picked up at the Home Depot. This was a scrap left over from another project. I have 5 arrows from the Dollar Tree. I have some long screws. I have a little piece of wood that came from a wine box from something my fiance Rich had gotten a couple of Christmases ago, and then my drill. So I just figured out where I needed to drill my holes to secure my stick. It's going to be my upright, and then drilled the holes, started out my screws, and now I'm screwing them into the bottom of my little stand. Now I didn't countersink these, I was being lazy, so I ended up adding some tumbling tower blocks with some wood glue for feet to keep it up off the floor a little bit. So I prepped my arrows, made sure I took out all those little staples, and then I came in with some watered down paint. This was a gray watered down paint that I had originally that I went back and added some Java to. And once everything was all dry, I came in with some stencils that I created from my Silhouette Cameo. You can use whatever stencil you want. You could actually hand paint this. You could use transfers. So many options here, you guys. If you don't have a vinyl cutter, do not despair. You can do whatever you want with this. So I got them laid down. I'm going to use Mod Podge to go over everything to seal them in to help avoid with bleeding. So I'm using my little makeup sponge. You guys know I love the makeup sponges. They do a great job for stenciling. After I did the Mod Podge, I'm coming in with my color. And that's one reason why I love these makeup sponges. You can trim them down to whatever size you want to work with, so you can get into some of those really tiny little places when you're stenciling. It just gives you more control over the paint. So here I'm starting to take up the vinyl, and I had some super crisp edges thanks to the Mod Podge. So I was really pleased with how this turned out. Worked really well. So just a reminder that if you would like to share one of your projects, I do shout outs on my channel. So just email me at craftedbycorie@gmail.com, or you can tag me on Instagram. I would love to see what you are working on. So I'm just coming in and embellishing my little arrows a little bit more. I'm making some corn on the cob here. I had attempted to make some apples that you can see there. They look more like cherry tomatoes, but I tried. So I've got these little doodads from another project. I had pulled them off of some Dollar Tree signs. Actually, you saw that project a little bit earlier on this long video, but I went ahead and secured those. I gave that pumpkin a little bit of a different color, and now I'm making my little hot cider. So once I had them the way I wanted them, I went ahead and lined them up on my stand, and I'm just going to come in with 1-inch screws, and I'm going to nail them into the stand. And I only used 1 screw so that they could kind of be twisty and turny and adjustable if I chose to turn them a little bit here or there. And that was it. So here we go with DIY number 20. So this is my inspiration picture from Hobby Lobby, $18 for these little pumpkins. We're gonna make these for virtually free. I've got scrap wood. These are 2x4s from my garage, from other stuff that we've done. And then I had mixed together some chalk paint. I had used my pumpkin chalk paint, and then I used some Imperial Red in it, and then I think I ended up adding a little bit of yellow. I just wanted a deeper orange than the original pumpkin color. So you can use whatever orange you would like, but that was what I wanted. So I'm going to use one of these small wood planks from the Dollar Tree pack of 6. And I'm going to give it a good coat of paint with my Home Decor chalk paint in truffle. So this is just a nice chocolate brown color. I'm giving it one good coat of paint on both sides. And the edges. You want to make sure you get the edges as well. So now I'm going to come in with my Sharpie paint marker in yellow and just getting that ready to go. And I'm trying to visualize. I'm very visual, you guys. So I'm visualizing how I want the letters to look and want to make sure that it's all going to fit and be centered on my piece. So I was just doing an air practice there, if you will. So I come in and start to write, and it's not coming out as dark or as thick, if you will, as I want it to. So I'm like, let me shake it up in a second here, you'll see. And yeah, splattered all over all over my sign. You know, crafting stuff happens sometimes, you guys, and you just keep going. I was fortunately able to just wipe it away for the most part. You can just paint right over it if you have faux pas like that. So I was a little bit more careful from then on out, but I did end up going over my letters 2 or 3 times with my paint marker as I used it. And now my paint markers, they've been sitting on my shelf for a couple of years. It's been a while since I picked them up and used them, so that's part of it. It has nothing to do with Sharpie. So they actually are really great paint markers. Mine had just been sitting for a long time, so I was lucky that they were working at all. So came back in and just got my letters to the level that I wanted them. So there you go, pumpkins. So now I'm going to use this washi tape. This is from the Dollar Tree, and I had never used this for painter's tape before, but I had seen somebody else do it, and I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. This feels like a paper tape. If I had to describe it, it feels like paper. So I wasn't too sure how this was going to work, but it actually ended up doing a really good job, you guys. So I'm trying to figure out where I want to make my stripes here. So just lining all of that up and getting it where I want it, and just really pressing it down in hopes that I won't have any bleeding. So now I'm coming in with my Imperial Red, and I'm just going to give that a couple of coats, just using a regular small paintbrush to do this. It's kind of like a flat paintbrush. And here we go, pulling it up, and sharp lines. I was really, really happy and pleasantly surprised. I wasn't sure what to expect with this type of tape, but look at that, super sharp. So now I'm coming in with my, I think it's called Summer Porch chalk paint. Yeah, Summer Porch. So it's like a nice light yellow with my little round foam brush. And just making my little polka dots all over this little guy. So there you have that. And now I'm going to be using my linen white chalk paint. I've run out of, I think I might have a little bit down in the bottom of the jar, you guys, but I'm almost completely out of my my white chalk paint from the home decor that I had. So using my Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint, and I like this chalk paint as well. It goes on really nicely. I'm just doing my little zigzag lines. Now you could tape all of this off. I honestly just didn't feel like going to all of that effort. So I decided to do it by hand. So it's not perfect, but I was happy with it. And now I'm coming in with my tumbling tower blocks, the ones that are already that chocolate brown color, and I'm using my wood glue and a little bit of hot glue around the wood glue to just secure these on. So the wood glue is going to give that long-term bond, and the hot glue will give that immediate hold so we can keep working. I was showing you my raffia. I'm going to take a few pieces of raffia and make little bows around my stems there. So I actually just did simple bows with a few of the lengths of raffia all together, and then I'll just end up gluing those down. So you can see how I just tied the bow. I think I had 3 strands of raffia that I then folded in half and then tied. And I did that for all 3 of my little pumpkins. So just securing those with the hot glue, getting those on the stems and all set. So now I'm coming in with some greenery that I had left over, and I'm just trimming off the little stems of the leaves, and I'm going to tuck these in and secure them with some hot glue as well. Now, if you don't already, I would love it if you want to follow me on Instagram. You can find me at craftedbycorie on Instagram. And if you make one of these projects, I would love for you to go ahead and tag me. I always love seeing what you guys are working on, if it's something that I've made or otherwise. And I have no idea, just a picture. Just a picture. I'm not sure why I said just a picture. So, yeah, not sure what the just picture was about. But craftedbycorie@gmail.com. You can email me a picture of your projects also if you'd like to have a shout out. Because as my subscribers know, if you've been watching my videos lately, I've been giving shout outs to you guys who have been sharing your work with me. I love seeing what you guys are working on. And so if you wanted a little bit of a shout out, go ahead and email me a picture and I will be happy to share your project on an upcoming video. So now I am using the twine that is wired from the Dollar Tree, and I've just made little corkscrews on either side, and I'm twisting it around my pumpkin stems and securing that down with some hot glue, just making my little pumpkin tendrils. And I did end up just using a little bit of hot glue on the end of each of these lengths of the wired twine, because I did find that once you cut it, it starts to fray. So you're going to want to put a little bit of something on the ends, otherwise you're going to have wire sticking out and might poke somebody. So just recommend putting a little bit of glue on there. So I had put some glue on there. I was out of frame because I was like blowing on it, so I wouldn't totally scald myself when I started putting my fingers on it to just secure that down and get it the way that I wanted it. So now we're just going to secure our little pumpkin sign to our center pumpkin. And again, just using a whole bunch of hot glue for that, putting it a little bit of an angle, just like the inspiration picture. And there you have it. Aren't they cute? I love these. These were super popular with you guys too. So thank you. Here we go with DIY number 21. This is our inspiration picture, $23.99 at Wayfair. Our Give Thanks Always. This was also super popular with you guys. Thank you so much for all of the kind comments that you guys shared on this. I know that this has inspired some of you to actually create the project or something similar, and I love seeing your pictures. So thank you so much for sharing. I had cut these out of my my vinyl on my Silhouette Cameo, but you could certainly use stencils. You could hand letter these. You could print something off of Word and do a transfer with graphite paper or what do they call it? You know what I'm talking about. Graphite paper, it's the transfer paper. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank, you guys. But I think you know what I'm talking about. But point is, you have a lot of options. So I gave everything a good coat of the Java chalk paint, which is that chocolate brown color. And now I'm coming in with my pumpkin by Waverly right now, and I'm not making it perfect. I don't want it to be perfect. So I'm just making a little bit streaky and dry brushed, especially on the edges, because I wanted that chocolate to still be coming through. And I'm going to do it on both sides because I have the thought that I can make this reversible at some point. I have not done that yet, but I may very well at some point. So now I'm coming in with my moss chalk paint for this larger block, if you will. And then I am going to be mixing some of the Java with some of my Imperial Red to make the burgundy color for my middle block. So now I have my little stencils applied and I'm ready to go. But before I start stenciling with my final color, I'm going to come in with the base color to help avoid any bleeding. Now I forgot to do extra paint for my cranberry color, so I'm going to be using Mod Podge for that one, and this ended up being a little bit of an experiment. So I'm using my little cosmetic sponges. As you know, I love the cosmetic sponges for stenciling. And I'm just coming in really nicely with the same color paint. And then gonna do the same thing on my cranberry with the Mod Podge. And I just really wanted to make sure that that was sealed nicely so that I wouldn't get bleeding when I came in with my actual paint color. So by going over it with the base color that you used, so like for instance that orange, if you have any bleeding, it's going to bleed the orange, so you're not going to see it, and that's going to seal your stencil in. So when you come back over it with your actual color, you shouldn't have the bleeding that you might otherwise get. And that is a trick that I learned from Natalie over at Designed to the Nines. She is awesome. She's got a great channel and highly recommend her if you haven't already checked her out. So now coming in with my moss, because that is what I used on that bottom block. And once I have everything sealed, I'm then going to come in with my linen white chalk paint by Rust-Oleum, and I'm going to do my actual final color stencil here. So when I was doing this, I was really curious to see how the paint color technique was going to work compared to the Mod Podge technique. So here we go to reveal it. We're gonna see how it worked. And the lines were really very crisp for the most part. I had virtually no bleeding. There's a little tiny bit, but I was able to just scrape it away. So I was really happy with it. And I'm using my compass. One of my subscribers, I was calling it a protractor, you guys, in the original video. And one of my kind subscribers let me know that it's actually a compass. So I was using that because it had a really sharp point on it. I still need to look for the pin pens that Wendy from White Sparrow Living talks about using, but I haven't done that yet. So there's my give. And now we're gonna see how we did with the thanks and the Mod Podge. And I would say that it worked relatively well. I definitely had some bleeding of the Mod Podge, so it prevented my white from bleeding. But when I was pulling this up, I found that it was also lifting some of the actual letters that I wanted to be there. It was lifting them up. You saw I just fixed my little A. I was able to pull it back down off of what had lifted off and put it back down, but it kind of messed with my paint a little bit. So, and I didn't realize every single time what was happening. So I did end up having to just go back in with a tiny little paintbrush and fix some of those areas, like the bottom of my T there. You can see it was missing the little base on half of the T. And then I noticed that because the Mod Podge had leaked out, you could see it. I don't know if you can see it on the camera there, but it kind of made a little bit of a shine all around the letters. So I did decide to just go back in and Mod Podge everything afterwards, which actually turned out really well because I liked the way that it looked when it was all done. So pulling off my final stencil, and this also came out really nice and crisp with the moss. I think I only had one little spot where I had a little tiny bit of bleeding, and I was able to take care of that by just using the end of my compass and scrape that paint away a little bit. So I'm just getting all the little bits and pieces, trying to remember where the little bits and pieces are on the letters so that I can make sure that I'm pulling them off, because it was a little hard to see with the paint. So there we go. So then I do go back over and I just seal everything in with the Mod Podge, and this just gave it a nice protective coat, and it took care of that visual on the thanks sign where I had the little blobs, if you will, of a Mod Podge around all of my letters. So now you can't even tell. It looks super pretty. And that was the matte Mod Podge, you guys, but you can see it does have a little bit of a sheen to it. So now I'm going to get my blocks ready to put together. And I'm going to use my Gorilla Wood Glue, and I'm going to put this on the shorter of the two blocks when I'm doing this so that I know exactly how much space I have for the glue. And I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue on either end for that immediate bond. And then I'm just going to make sure that it's centered on my block. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the shortest block, put the glue on that so that when I apply it to the larger block, it's I don't have any glue like seepage or whatever. Now with the wood glue, if it does seep out a little bit, because I did put on a little too much, and so I did find that it was leaking out a little bit, that does dry clear, so you can just wipe it away, and if you have a little teeny bit of it that's still oozing out, it'll dry clear, so you don't really need to worry about that. So now I'm coming in with my buffalo check ribbon. This is from the Hobby Lobby. I'd gotten it 50% off when they were having one of their ribbon sales. And I'm going to get my sign centered and get it situated on the ribbon where I want it. And then I'm going to just tie I think I tied a knot here to begin with. Yes, tied a knot. And now I am just creating a loop with another piece of ribbon. You can see, and I'm just making sure that the bow is about the width that I want it. And I'm tying another knot, but then before I pull it tight, I'm tucking the end underneath the original knot. Hopefully that makes sense and you can tell what I'm doing. Because that way the knot ends up underneath your bow so you don't see the knot on top. And that creates our tails as well. And then I'm going to tuck the other tail underneath as well. So the knot is underneath. We've got our cute little bow. I can fluff that up, and then I am going to dovetail the ends, just making them the length that I want them. And there you have it. So DIY number 22. Okay, so for this, I've got 3 of these little wooden pumpkins from the Dollar Tree. They have different sayings on them, and they're fine, but I'm going to use my Dollar Tree sanding block to sand those down. I'm also using some Mod Podge and some paper that I got from the Hobby Lobby. So first I'm going to take care of my little signs and get all of the glitter off with my sanding block. I'm going to do that with all 3 signs. So once that is done, I am going to take my craft paper. These were, I think, originally 69 cents a piece, but they were on sale for 25 cents or 4 for $1. So really great deal. And I'm going to trace my little pumpkin on each of the pieces of paper and get those cut out the way that I want them. So once those were all cut out, I'm going to use my Mod Podge and apply the paper to the surfaces of our little wood signs. And I would recommend giving this a really healthy coat of Mod Podge. I kind of took off more of the Mod Podge than I probably should have. I was wishing that I had left it a little bit thicker coat-wise, but live and learn, right? So hopefully you'll learn from my mistakes, and you can just apply a little bit extra Mod Podge on there. It'll just help secure the paper a little bit better. I ended up with some air bubbles in there, and so it's fine. But I do recommend using a thicker coat. So once I got those on there, I just smoothed them out. I was using my knuckles, and then eventually realized that it would probably be better to use my little burnishing tool from my Cameo, my Silhouette Cameo. So I ended up going back in and smoothing those down better. A credit card would work as well, anything like that. And then I sanded these down on the edges just to help get any overhang off, and it just helped to make it look a little bit more rustic as well, and not so perfect. So there you go. And at first I had left those little bows on because I did want them on there, but I just found that they were in the way when I was trying to do what I wanted to do here. So I ended up pulling them off, and then I re-secured them a little bit later. And the neat thing about these, you guys, you can totally do something on the other side. So I did go in and Mod Podge over these. I'm not sure that this was necessary, but I guess I decided it was going to be good to seal these in. So once it was all dry, I went ahead and added my little bows back on with some hot glue. And there you have it. So DIY number 23. So for this is something my sister had given me in a whole box of goodies. And when I saw it, it looked like a mushroom to me. That was immediately what I saw when I looked at that. So I am going to paint my mushroom. This is the Imperial Red and the Java chalk paint, as well as the sheepskin. These are all by Home Decor, which is by Folk Art. And I really like their chalk paint. I like, you know what? I like all the different chalk paints that I've used. They just all have different consistencies to them. So, but I like all of them. The Home Decor is a little bit thicker than the Waverly, but the Waverly has a really nice, how do I explain it? A nice finish to it. So does the Home Decor, but it has more significant coverage, I would say. So I'm coming in with the sheepskin and I'm doing the base of my mushroom. And I've never done anything like this before, you guys, so I'm learning as I go. And if I can do this, you can do this. So I've painted the base of my mushroom, and now I'm coming in. Oh, and you know what? I thought this was the Imperial Red, but I'm mistaken. That is not what I used. This was Salmon Coral by Home Decor. Salmon Coral. So as I'm doing this, I'm just thinking about where the light would hit it, where it would be lighter versus darker, where the shadows might be. So now I'm going to mix in some of the Java chalk paint with my Salmon Coral. And I'm going to try and get just a little bit of a deeper tone and almost make like an ombre effect going down the mushroom, for lack of a better term. And I'm sorry I'm not showing you what I'm doing. You're going to get to see it in just a second. As I'm doing this, I'm thinking about the way that a mushroom looks underneath, and see how that's like wispy. So I always think about the underneath of a little button mushroom and all those little sections that the mushroom has. So I really wanted to try to get that effect. So that's what I'm aiming for when I'm coming through here with this paint. And then I'm just blending it. And as I've said before, you know, paint is great because you can just keep blending until you get it the way you want it. And if you get a little too much of one color, you can add in another one, and you can just paint over mistakes if you make them. So you can see here I'm coming back in with some more of the lighter tone because it was getting a little too dark up towards the top. So you just keep going back and forth until you get it the way that you want it. So now I'm coming back in with another coat of the sheepskin, and that paintbrush was just giving too much coverage for what I wanted where the two colors were meeting. So I was showing you my little chippy brush. This is from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just coming back in with the chippy brush with more of that sheepskin, and it's giving me that wispy look that I really was striving for. So very happy with that. Using my heat gun to get that all dry, and then coming in with little specks of the sheepskin paint and just doing this randomly, just like you would see a mushroom have. I have to say I'm very proud of this project, you guys, because I don't consider myself a fine painter by any stretch of the imagination, and I was really proud of how this came out. So now I'm going to take some of my floral foam, And I'm going to cut it down so that it fits properly inside this little guy. Just making sure that it's all nice and tight in there so that I have a good base to work with. And I'm going to glue down some of this moss, and then I'm going to come in with some little flowers. And I'm trying to remember, I think the flowers that I'm about to use came from the Hobby Lobby, but I'm not certain. I'm fairly sure that that's where I'd gotten them from a while back. Just coming in with my little yellow, I'm not sure if they're roses, but just really cute little flowers and my greenery. Coming in with a little bit more just to fill it out. And there you have it. Let me know what you think in the comments. And give me a big thumbs up. So this is DIY number 24. So for this, I'm using a Dollar Tree foam wreath form. I've got some Dollar Tree moss, and then I've got a whole bunch of picks. All of these are from the Dollar Tree. So I'm going to start out by securing my moss all over the wreath form. And this is just going to make a nice base so that you don't see that green foam in between any of the floral picks. Just securing all of that down with some hot glue. So now I am going to determine which of the picks that I want to use. And as you've heard me say before, I design on the fly. So I am just figuring it out as I go and making sure that it's just something that I think is pretty, you know? And if I start putting it together and I don't like how it looks, I can always pull it right apart again. So I was just showing you that I'm trimming down these picks with my wire cutters so that they are long enough to be sticking into the foam form, but not so long that they'll go through the other side of it. Hopefully that makes sense. You want to have them long enough to be able to be secured, but you don't want them coming out through the other side and poking out. So just using a bunch of different colors of these mums. Are these mums or are these dahlias? Oh my goodness, I can't remember. It's been a long week, you guys. I am doing this final part of the voiceover on Friday night, and it's been a long week. I think you probably know I work full time, so this is a labor of love that I do in my spare time. And I've had such a kick out of doing all these crafts, and it's just been so much fun to interact with all of you and to read all of your comments. And you know, a lot of you say that I inspire you, but you inspire me. Let me tell you, I am just so happy, and I get so excited when I see the comments on the projects, and it just drives me to just keep on going and trying to be more creative and coming up with new ideas. So thank you so much for all of your comments and your support. I can't tell you how much it feeds my soul. It really does. So thank you.
And I appreciate your patience with me when my brain goes on pause with some of this stuff, because like I said, sometimes my days can be a little bit draining, and so it's I'm working on the final brain cells. But here our wreath is coming together. I'm just making sure that it's starting to fill out. If any place looks like it needs a little bit more love, I'm trying to give it some more love. But anybody can do this, you guys. It's just clip and stick and clip and stick, and you just do what makes you happy. Do what you like. Use the colors you love. And there you go. DIY number 25. So for this, I am using a full-size foam core board from the Dollar Tree, and this piece of wood from Home Depot. It was $1.18. I've also got my little decal that I had cut out off of my Silhouette Cameo, and then I was showing you my chalk paint in sheepskin. So I am just measuring it so I know what size to cut my wood at. So I got that all cut down with my little miter box, and I am going to be using my wood glue. I thought I was going to be using my did I actually end up using those? I can't remember if I used my vases or not, but I'm using my wood glue because that's going to give me a nice secure bond. Yeah, I think I ended up not using the vices because they were just making it wonky. They weren't the right tool for what I was trying to do. So I do have my square there, so I was just trying to make sure that all of my corners were square. And then I came in with my staple gun for a little extra support in each of those corners where the frame was coming together. I did not angle these corners. I wanted it to be more rustic looking, so I left them square. Hopefully that makes sense. So now I'm coming in with my sheepskin, and I'm going to give it a nice coat of paint. This is my frame. I'm just going to paint it all over, and I've got my parchment paper down underneath there. I always talk about the Dollar Tree parchment paper that I just love. It pops up in little sheets, and my paint doesn't stick to it. So I found with craft paper, it always ends up sticking to my project, and I'm trying to pull it off, and paper's coming with it, and so I really like the parchment paper. So now I'm giving my foam core board, the entire board, a coat of the sheepskin as well, because I just felt like it was too stark white for the fall. I wanted something that was a little bit softer, a little bit more muted. I'm using my heat gun to get it all dry because I have no patience. And let's face it, time is at a premium for all of us. You know, no matter what you do, if you are raising a family, if you're a stay-at-home mom, even if you're retired, somehow I am sure that our days just end up getting filled with activities and projects and stuff around the house. And so time is, you know, time is important. But applying my decals, I decided that I wanted to apply these before I put the frame on. So just trying to get it all lined up, and you want to make sure you get it where you want it when it's getting close there, because it just likes to suck right down onto the project. So I was like, oh boy, I hope it's where it needs to be because this puppy is not coming up. So fortunately, it was where I wanted it. So all's well that ends well, right? I'm just going to burnish that on, and then I'll be removing my transfer tape. And this worked really, really nicely. And I love Unicorn Dust Designs. Sammy there does wood signs on Wednesdays. You should check out her channel if you like wood signs, and then she actually does a lot of other DIYs on Mondays and Fridays and all kinds of crafts. She's fantastic. She and I have become really good friends, and she talks about on the wood signs how she does not use vinyl usually. She will stencil on the wood signs just because she feels like it gives a higher quality, and I do have to agree with her. But I found with the foam core board, the decals just seem to work really well. They just adhere really well, and at least on the projects that I've done this way, I have not really been able to tell that it's vinyl. I hope that makes sense. I don't know, they just have come out really sharp. I agree with her on the wood though. I think it definitely looks nicer if you stencil on the wood. Now for something like this, if you don't have a vinyl cutter, again, you can hand letter this. You can use stencils that you can pick up at your local craft store, you guys. You can do transfers, right? So you can trace it on in pencil and then go back over it with paint or a Sharpie, whatever works for you. It does not have to be vinyl. And as I mentioned, sometimes it likes to suck right down onto what you're doing, and my little decal actually got a bubble in it right there. Fortunately, it wasn't a big one, so I was able to just splice my L and lay it overlapping itself, and you can't even tell. But I was a little nervous there for a minute when it kind of dropped down onto my board, and there was nothing I could do about it. So hello, fall. So now I'm taking my bare wax in dark, and I'm just going to go over the frame a little bit with this because I wanted it to have a little bit of a distinction from the background of my picture, if you will, my hello fall sign. So I wanted this to have a little bit more depth. I didn't want it to just be completely uniform with what was being framed. Now, once that was done, I was ready to put my frame on, and my foam core board did curve on me. From what I understand from some of my subscribers, it's probably because I only painted the one side, and it sounds like if you paint both sides of the foam core board, it might lay flat. So my solution was to use my little clamps. These are from the Dollar Tree. They are in the automotive section. And so I clamped everything down just to make sure that I was getting it lined up and even and centered. Because again, I put my Hello Fall on before I framed it. It probably would have been less of a situation here with that if I had done it the other way around and framed it and then put down my letters. But I just thought it was going to be easier to put my vinyl down first because of the size of the vinyl that I was working with. So now I'm coming in with my staple gun and just securing everything all the way around the perimeter of the frame. I'm trying to remember if I used glue as well. I may have used some wood glue, but the staple gun was perfect. So then I used some of my jute cord that is from Walmart. I think that big spool was probably some, I can't remember how much it was, but it was from Walmart. And I am again going to use my staple gun. I'm just measuring down on both sides because I wanted to have my cord hit at the same place on either side of my frame. I guess I was just thinking it would hang a little bit more evenly. I don't know whether that impacts it or not, to be honest with you, but that was the thought process. So I'm coming in with my staple gun. I am I am stapling that down, and then I end up pulling it back up the opposite way and stapling it again. I was just thinking that that would help to keep it from slipping out. And trimming off the ends, and I've got my hanger. So here is everything, how it came out. DIY number 26. So for this, I am using a baby blanket from the Dollar Tree. I'm also using this cord. It's just a really pretty ivory cord that I had left over from another project like years ago, literally like 20 years ago. I've got a needle, some embroidery floss. I've got an old foam brush handle from a foam brush that ceased to be able to be used. I've got my pizza screen that I used earlier. I'm going to be using it for the same purpose again, and the fiber fill that I showed you there. Again, using a pen to trace out a rough circle that's a couple of inches larger than my pizza screen, and then I'm going to cut that out. As I've mentioned, I would love for you to follow me on Instagram. I can be reached at craftedbycorie. And if you create any of these projects, I would love it if you tag me, share your work with me. I'd love to see it. So once I've got my circle all cut out, I'm going to cut a length of the embroidery floss. I ended up, these are like little strands of 6, right? And I ended up pulling it apart and thinking that 3 was going to be sufficient. In hindsight, I was wishing I'd left all 6 of them together. This was a project I had seen Olivia from Olivia's Romantic Home do, and she warned us that the thread had snapped on her, so she warned that we should use a heavier thread. So that was why I was using the embroidery floss, and I thought it was going to be enough. It ended up snapping on me too. So definitely need a heavier gauge thread, or use all 6 strands of the embroidery floss. Perhaps that would work. I may have also overstuffed this. That might have contributed to it as well. Not sure, but just be forewarned. So this, again, very simple project. It doesn't matter if you've never sewn before. You can see I'm just going in and out and in and out and in and out with my needle. So going all the way around, and when I get to the end, I'm just going to start to pull that together. So now stuffing it with my fiber fill. You could use the stuffing from an old pillow if you've got that laying around. Otherwise, fiber fill is really easy to find at your local craft store, especially if they sell sewing supplies. So this was after my second time around. You can tell I didn't pull it completely tight in the middle there because I was afraid I was going to snap the cord again. But I am preparing my little stick from my old foam brush, and I'm going to just stick that right down inside of my pumpkin. This is going to be my stem. So I'm going to use some hot glue to help secure that down in there and get my little fabric all around the stem nice and tight. And now I'm going to be coming in with some picks. This is from Hobby Lobby. I had gotten it on sale. I always get everything on sale, you guys. So I'm going to steal those little tendrils, and I'm going to pull off some of the fun little beaded areas. I might have used this whole pick, I don't remember, but as you've already heard me say, I tear apart all of these picks all the time because it gives me the opportunity to really place them the way I want. So I would say it's very rare when I do not pull apart a pick. It's very rare. So just placing these all around my little pumpkin stem. I'm using the wire to wrap it around the stem and help secure it. And then I do eventually go back in with some hot glue just to secure it completely. Tucking in some of my little tendrils. Look how cute. So now I'm using that cord that I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to make a cute little bow, just looping that together as you've seen me do before. And then I'm going to use the other piece to tie around the center. I did wrap it around there a couple of times before I tied it, just to give it a little bit more something in the middle there. And trim off the ends. I did just light the ends just to singe them so that it wouldn't fray. Be very careful if you do this at home. You don't want to light anything on fire. And then using my hot glue to secure my bow to the pumpkin. I love this, you guys. I loved it so much that I decided to make a second one. So I made a little baby pumpkin, that white fabric that I've been using for a whole bunch of different things. So again, in and out and in and out. So you thread your needle, you knot the end of your thread, and then you just start. It's really not difficult. I really encourage you to try it, even if you've never sewn before. And this one I had a much easier time with, maybe having learned the first time. And also this fabric was not nearly as thick as the fabric from the baby blanket. So that might have had something to do with it as well. This is just a plain cotton fabric. It's about the weight of a sheet, if you will, like a bed sheet. So for this one, I'm going to use a little Dollar Tree birch stem, little piece of wood. I love those, by the way. Isn't that cute? These make me so happy. I love pumpkins, you guys. This time of year, I am pumpkin obsessed. Anything pumpkin, it just makes me happy. I started to use this jute cord for my bow, and I was like, yeah, this is just way too thick for this. So I ended up taking it off, and I pulled it apart, and I just used a little, I think it was just one of the 3 strands, and that ended up being perfect. It was just too heavy for such a tiny, dainty little pumpkin to have that big, thick piece of jute on there. So this worked out much better. So cute. I love these. So you got baby and mama pumpkins. Give me a big thumbs up if you like these. DIY 27. Okay, you're going to recall this project from a little bit earlier, our little painted pumpkins. We are going to use the back of them. This is my inspiration picture, $34.99 at Wayfair. For us, it is free if we did this other little pumpkins project. So I'm going to turn my pumpkins over onto their backs and go ahead and use my black Sharpie marker
my Sharpie paint pen, I should say, excuse me, to write my letters out. So here's my black Sharpie. And I'm very visual, you guys. You've probably heard me say that before. So I always have to kind of do like an air practice to figure out how I want my letters. So that was what I was doing there at first. Just want to make sure that I am doing the letters the way that I want them. And then I'm going to come in and embellish with some spider webs and some other little creepy crawlers and just make these super cute. And I pretty much followed the example of the inspiration picture, if you will. The only main difference here is that I only have 3 little pumpkins instead of 4, so I didn't do the exclamation point. If you want to do a 4th pumpkin, you certainly can, and then you can have the exclamation point that goes along with the boo as well. So I've got my spider web done there. I've got my little spider that I'm drawing. How do you all like to decorate for Halloween? What is your favorite Halloween decoration? Do you like ghosts? Do you like witches? Do you like spiders and creepy crawly things? Do you like skulls? Skulls really creep me out. I don't know what it is about them. Well, maybe because they're skulls, but I don't know. There's just something about them that creep me out. I have not been able to bring myself to do anything with them as of yet. So never say never, but yeah, they really creep me out. So thickening up my letters and just getting those all filled in and getting things the way that I want them. This is a super easy project, you guys. Anybody can do this. If you recall, these were pieces of scrap wood that I had in my garage. I painted them orange, added the embellishments to them. If you don't want to do the original project, you could do just the boo project as well. But this way, our little signs are reversible. And you can embellish them however you'd like. If you don't like spiders and spider webs, you could put ghosts on them. Anything, really. Witches, ghosts, you name it. So there we go, our little boo. DIY number 28. All right, so these are my Arteza wood slices and the Arteza outdoor acrylic paint that they sent me. I've got my black Sharpie paint marker there that I was showing you as well. So these little wood rounds are, they've got pre-drilled holes in them. They are pre-sanded. I'll go ahead and leave all of the links in the description box again if you have any interest. There is a coupon code for 10% off that Arteza provided that's good through the end of October as well. So I'm just coming in with my Tangelo and giving this just a rough coat. At first I thought I was going to completely cover it, and then when I started with the paint, I noticed that I could still see the wood grain underneath it and through it, and I actually liked that. So I decided I wanted this to be a little bit more rustic. I wasn't going to do a really solid heavy coat. I was going to do some dry brushing along the edges as I got closer to the edge. So I've got more color focused and concentrated in the center. And then as I went out, it got a little bit lighter.
this is the jungle green that I'm using, and then I've got the papaya whip that I'm using over top of it. These colors are just so vibrant. I love them. They're really, really nice. So now I'm coming in, once I had all of my slices the colors that I wanted them, coming in and doing my lettering. I'm just drawing the outlines of block letters to write out the word Hello Fall. And then I'm coming back in and filling in my letters with the gold acrylic paint. So I've got these little backwards right now, Hello Fall or Fall Hello. I'm just helping them dry here. And then I'm going to string them on the cord that came with the wood slices. And I'm going to do this by tucking it through the back, making a loop, tucking it through the back, out through the front, and I'm going to flip that loop over the wood slice and then pull it tight. And that's going to secure my wood slices where I want them on the length. So I'm going to show you a little bit closer here. Folding it in half, so I've got a little bit of a loop. Pinching that so that it'll go through the little hole, sticking it through the hole, pulling my loop up large enough so that it'll go over the bottom of the wood round, pulling the wood round through the loop, and then pulling that tight. See there? And then I just did that with all of them all the way along until I had them all on my cord. And then once they're all on the cord, I'm going to line up my ends. You'll see in just a minute, get those even, and then I'll just trim off my ends. It ends really quickly here, so I'm kind of explaining to you what I'm going to do because I'm not going to have a lot of time to tell you in a second. So here you can see, lining it up, going to trim it, and that's that. DIY number 29. So using the wood rounds again, these are Arteza wood rounds. I've also got my Dollar Tree jute twine. I've got a few tumbling tower blocks from the Dollar Tree. I'm using some floral wire. I think I picked that up from Hobby Lobby a while back. I have a twig. This is left over from one of those broomsticks that I had used. And then I've got a few colors of my Arteza outdoor acrylic paint. And it's important that I stress that this is, oh no, not for this one. I'll tell you about that later because I've got another project where I use the outdoor paint and, oh, but that was a different video, so it's not on this one. So point being, if it's outdoor paint, it should be able to hold up to moisture. I had made, in my last video, I made some coasters and they really aren't technically fall, so I didn't include them in this video, but because I used the outdoor paint on them, I figured I didn't need to seal them because they should be able to hold up. So at any rate, now I am making my little pumpkins. So I did give these a really good coat this time, and I'm looking for the flattest part of this because I'm going to go ahead and secure it down to my tumbling tower block that's going to serve as our base and let it stand up. I did both sides of all my pumpkins, you guys, as per usual, because I like things to be finished, and because these can also be two-sided and they'll be able to stand up on a little tiered tray or on the counter or on a table somewhere, and then if it's finished on both sides, you know, everything's pretty and it doesn't matter which way it's facing, right? So I gave it a really good coat on all sides of the Tangelo. And actually on the bark edges, I did more of a rough coat. Those weren't like solidly coated in the orange. I kind of liked the bark showing through. So And then I came back in with some of the chocolate paint and the papaya whip, and I'm just creating my little contours for the pumpkins, so you can tell that they really are a pumpkin. And again, just blending the colors, and if you get a little bit too much of one color, you can come back in with another. I just kept going back and forth. You can see me adding in a little bit more Tangelo, just getting it to the place that I like it. And I did that for all 3 of my little pumpkins on both sides of each pumpkin. So then, once those were all done, I went ahead and took my little twig, and I'm going to score it with my scissors. And I'm making these random lengths, so they are not all the same, but scoring it and then snapping it off. And this little twig was heavy duty, you guys. It was really solid. So it took a little bit of an effort to to cut these, but I managed. I was using my table to kind of press it down and lever it. But once I had those all cut down, I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue to secure them to the tops of my pumpkins. I'm just trying to decide which one I want to use where, because my pumpkins are different heights and my stems are all different heights as well. So I just wanted to figure out which one I wanted on which. And I did not bother with sanding off the edges of these. You certainly could, but I just liked the kind of jagged look to it, because with pumpkins, when they come up out of the field or whatever, a lot of the time they're not, the stems on them are a little bit jagged, right? So I wanted that to have more of a natural, unfinished edge, if you will. So I just had to hold that until the hot glue not dried, but cooled down enough to hold those little stems securely, which it did. It just took a second of patience to let the hot glue cool. So now I'm going to use my floral wire, and I'm going to take a length of that. And I thought maybe I could use my finger to do the tendrils, but then I decided the tendrils are way too large for these tiny little pumpkins. So I ended up using the paint brush, the end of the paintbrush to do that. I'm sorry, I was a little off frame there, but you just twist it around and around something like a pencil or a paintbrush, whatever has the thickness or the gauge, if you will, of what you want your little tendril to look like. So I think I'm going to show you in frame a little bit better here, but I just went round and round and round and then slid it right off and then pulled it apart a little bit, make it springy, and then you can manipulate it however you want it. And then I just twisted it around my little stem, and then I went back and secured each of them with a little dab of hot glue again. You don't need a lot, just I want a little bit there because there wasn't really anything there to keep them in place. So now I'm making some finger bows with my jute cord, my Dollar Tree jute cord. I just wrapped it around and around my fingers probably about a dozen times, and then cut off another little length, and I'm just tying it around the middle there. And then I'm fluffing up my little bow. And then I'm going to be gluing it to the top of my pumpkins. So wrapping it around my fingers, cutting it off, tying it around the middle. Really simple little bow. So I'm going to show you closer up here so you can see exactly what I'm doing and a little bit slower. So just wrapping it around and around my fingers until I've got the number of loops that I want. And again, it doesn't have to be exact. I did not count these. I did it until it looked right to me for all 3 of these. So for all I know, Every single one of these 3 little bows has a different number of loops because I did not count them as I was doing it. I just did it until they were about the thickness that I wanted for my little project. Pulled that tight, finished off the knot. Fluffed it out, trimmed off the ends, and there you have it. So then I just came in and I secured each one of them with a little bit of hot glue. Aren't they cute? DIY number 30. We're coming up on it, you guys. So for this project, I am using the Arteza vinyl with my little squeegee, their transfer tape as well. I have these 3 vases that are, well, they're square, but then rectangular. I don't know. But I've had them forever. I couldn't even tell you where I got them from. I don't know how long I've had them, but they've been laying around for quite some time. So I decided I was going to use them for this project. And I had forgotten to show you my inspiration picture, but it will come up in just a minute because I realized when I was editing the first video that I hadn't shared it with you. So you'll see that in a second. But it was something on Oriental Trade. But I had cut these out on my Silhouette Cameo. And I'm not sure if I was trying to come up with ideas that you could use for creating these if you wanted to do it differently. And you might be able to use like a reverse stencil and then paint your piece. I don't know if that's making any sense at all, but and then just pull away the little pieces to reveal the glass again. Hopefully that you understand what I'm talking about. But I'm cutting down my transfer tape, and then up here, this is the inspiration picture that I told you I was going to be showing you. I thought they were really cute. So I had scored with my cutting machine right down the middle of the vinyl there too. So this transfer tape is going to allow me to pull up just what I want. I'm not going to have an issue with the vinyl at the bottom half of the page. You'll see in just a moment. So here we go. And it took me a minute to realize that I was pulling it up the wrong way. So pulling the vinyl off of the backing doesn't work as well as pulling the backing off of the vinyl. So I was a little bit of a slow learner on this particular project, but I eventually got the hang of it and it started going much smoother. So here we go. All right, Corie, you got it now, girl. And there we go. Much easier that way. So now I'm going to apply the entire thing to my vase. Just make sure that you've got it lined up better than I did, because I was like, oh, I started to put it down. It wasn't quite where I wanted it, but it was too late. So live and learn again. So I smoothed that out as best I could, wrapped that all around, and then peeled away my transfer tape. So I'm just squeegeeing it out, trying to get as many of those air bubbles out as I can. And then I actually ended up using my little piercing tool here to just pop the little air bubbles. And I shouldn't say pop, because it's not like they burst, right? So I was putting in a teeny tiny little hole, as small as I could make it, just enough for the air to be able to release, and then I was smoothing it out with my little squeegee tool, and that allowed all of the air out without it being noticeable. Like, you do not see those little holes, and that's just a little trick that I picked up along the way. So doing the same thing with the other two. And here I finally got the hang of removing the backing from the vinyl instead of the other way around. So applying it to my vase. I got better every time, you guys. You know, like I said, live and learn. First time you do something, it might not work the way that you would envisioned, but you know, just keep on going with it, because you learn as you go, and then the more you do it, the better you get and the easier it becomes. So it's like with anything else. So I've tucked some paper in here right now so you can see the design. Enter if you dare. I just thought these were really super cute. I'll show them to you all lit up in a little bit. DIY 31, we made it. So for this final project, I am using this little swag form from the Hobby Lobby. It was originally $3.99. I'm sure that I got it on sale because I tend to like to get things on sale, but I've had it for quite some time, and I just hadn't figured out what I wanted to do with it. So I thought this would be a great project. And everything I do on one side, I'm going to do on the other, right? So I'm going to make it symmetrical. So right now, I am just determining how long I want things to be hanging over. I don't want them hanging over too far because I thought it might look a little weird with the form. So I cut these little grasses down. These I had saved from other Dollar Tree picks that I had pulled apart. So I had saved these thinking I'd be able to use them for another project in the future, and here I am. So I'm cutting these down to the size that I want, just making sure that they're about the same length, and then I'm going to start tucking them in all along in my form here. So now these are not thick enough for the form to hold them snugly, so I will come back in and use some hot glue on these. But you'll see later when I start adding the floral picks in, I don't need to use the hot glue for those because they are thicker and they stick right in there really nice and snugly, and I didn't have to worry about them falling out. Now you can always go back in and add some hot glue if you so choose, just for some extra added security. I just didn't find it necessary for this particular project. So here I am just gluing down those little pieces of the grass just to make sure that they're in there and not gonna come on out. So here I go. Oh, you know what? I don't think I pulled these apart. Here is a sample of one I didn't completely pull apart. There you go. So I guess I do every once in a while leave them as is. So I was just taking off the little tags. These are from the Hobby Lobby. Again, I've had them for some time. I tend to pick things up at the end of the season. So obviously I didn't get these recently. I probably got these a couple of years ago at the end of fall. And I'm just trying to figure out where I want things right now. I've got them in the orange. I also have them in the yellow. And then I was like, that Dollar Tree, and I keep calling it goldenrod because I don't know what else to call it. I don't know what it is, but I was like, that might look really nice underneath there. So I'm gonna cut this all apart and I'm gonna put that in there first. So I take away the other pieces with those beads that I was looking at, and then I'm gonna tuck in my goldenrod, for lack of a better term. So I'm gonna stick that in on either side. I ended up using 3 pieces on each side. One pick has 5 of those little tendrils. So if you want to use this, you're gonna need 2 picks. So I used the 3 and then the 2, and then I cut one more off of another pick to have my even sides so that it was uniform. So now I'm trying to figure out how long I want these other picks to be, and I'm just gonna go ahead and stick those in there. And like I said, those fit really nice and snug, so I did not end up having to come back in and hot glue them, nor with the Dollar Tree ones that I had already stuck in there as well. Now, one difference with these picks, I had 3 of each color, so I ended up using 2 orange and 1 yellow on the one side, and then I did 2 yellow and 1 orange on the other side. So the colors are a little bit different, but there's still the same balance with the number of items. So now I'm coming in with my little yellow flowers, and I tried to see if I could use these picks whole, and it wasn't gonna work, so I pulled these apart, and then I'm just gonna tuck them in different spots that makes it pleasing to my eye. We're just layering the different flowers on here. And these are all complementing tones of yellows and golds and oranges. But you could do this with any color scheme, you guys. So if you have a different color scheme in your home, or you want this to be something that you can use year round and not just for the fall, you can certainly use a different color palette and make this what you want for your own home. And again, this is such an easy project. You line it up, figure out how long you want everything, clip it off. Make sure that when you're clipping it, you're leaving a couple of extra inches because you're going to be tucking things in, right? So you're going to lose a couple of inches off of your length just by virtue of tucking it into your form. But it's really not hard. It really isn't. And you just make it the way that you like, make it the way that makes you happy. This should give you joy. And if you're a beginning crafter, this is an easy type of project to start with, really. A lot of the stuff that I do tends to be on the easier side. I know I definitely have some projects that are more advanced, for sure. But this is definitely something that you could try as a very, very beginner. Just clip and stick and clip and stick. It just takes a little bit of patience. And just take your time. Now I'm coming in with some pip berries. I love these pip berries. They just make me happy for whatever reason. They're just all kind of like crazy, and they twist all different directions, and I don't know, I just think they're super fun. So adding a little bit of that in on both sides. Again, I had pulled these picks apart, so just using little strands, and they're really easy to pull apart usually. Most of them are very easy to pull apart. I thought about using that last little pick that's sitting there, and then I was like, no, I don't need it. So there it is so far. And now I'm going to make, well, I was going to make a bow, and then I decided, you know what, I want something a little more rustic, and I had this pre-made bow. Again, I've had this for a while, you guys. I don't remember if it came from Hobby Lobby or Michael's or Joann's. It was probably one of those 3. And it has its own little twist tie on it, so I'm just twisting it off in the back. And that's it. Fluffing up my bow, and it's all done. Isn't this super pretty? Give me a big thumbs up if you like this, and leave me a comment. So here we go with the final reveal for these last projects.
Okay, everybody, that's it for today. That was a lot. If you are still here, congratulations to you. Amazing. Thank you so much for watching all the way through to the end. I am really impressed and really flattered, quite honestly. So if you watched all the way through to the end, I want you to leave me a comment saying, yes, I did. That's what I want you to say. Yes, I did. And if you do that, I'm going to be putting you in a drawing for a Dollar Tree calendar. I happen to have another calendar that has the blessed messages in it. So bless our nest and some other fun crafts that I'm going to be coming up with in the near future. But I will throw in that one, and I will see if I can find one other calendar. But again, if you've watched all the way through here, leave me a comment saying, yes, I did, and you'll be entered into that special drawing just for you guys who watched me all the way through, because that was a lot of time. So thank you again. Until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.